Yeah, no, but you got them dirty, so you can't sleep with it. Come. You got them super dirty.
Oh, she's not on. Okay. Hi, Karen. I am just getting set up here. Turn my light off, close my window, the blinds at least. Let me enable you to chat with me. There we go. And
Hello.
how are you today?
Good. How are you?
So I just almost had a crisis.
Uh-oh.
I was in, so, all right, long story. My wife's parents are in town, and my wife's mom just bought a new Range Rover. So she's like, I got to park my car in the garage. Fair enough. So my wife is now parking on our side, where, you know, like RV parking on the side. And well, I have all these, like I have like a farm, like I grow all this food, and I had all these pepper plants that are growing down. I call it Pepper Row.
Cool.
And when she was backing out, she turned her wheel at the moment that the wheel was going over my drip system that I have, just kind of in a kind of, you know, elbows down to go straight across the gravel, and then it goes into that row. When she's backing up, you know, she broke it. So the past couple of days, it hadn't been getting water, and I was like, I noticed it, and I was like, let me go water this. It was like 5:50. We're about to eat dinner. I was like, I got a half hour before I get on. So I go out there, and the last batch of peppers we got, none of them were hot. I mean, do you like hot peppers? Do you eat hot stuff?
Medium, yeah.
Okay.
I
So I mean, I grow habaneros and Scotch bonnets along with jalapeno, serrano,
Holy.
Thai peppers. So I ate a serrano pepper. The last batch of peppers we had, the habaneros, not the habaneros, were the only ones that were hot. That the Scotch bonnet, which is a cousin of the habanero, was not hot. None of the serranos were hot, and it was like, okay, something went wrong with this batch, but it's cool. We can make a nice salsa from this because it had a nice flavor. My wife, she fermented, I guess. So you put in salt water and pickled them, I guess, and they were real good as smoky flavor. So anyway, so I'm out there today. That's the backstory to say I'm out there. I'm watering the plants, and I was like, I wonder if these ones are hot. So I ate the tip, and I was like, oh, it's not. I took a bite. And it's like, no, it's got a kind of little kick. And then I ate the rest, and was like, oh, that was hot. Well, I guess since I hadn't eaten anything all day, and now this hot pepper sitting in my belly, I, you know, finish watering the plants. I come in, it's like 5 minutes after 6. I get ready to eat. And then this thing happened to me that it's happened to me before. So thank God I know what it is, because it's just this intense stomach pain. I was sweating. My shirt was drenched. I was, it's like I'm in pain. It's like, and I'm embarrassed because I'm like on the ground and I'm rolling around, and it's like, you know, and I was like, oh man, this thing needs to go away before, and just like literally about 6:25. So I have 5 minutes to go, I'll mash something real quick. And then now I'm here.
Oh my gosh, what if it comes back?
No, it won't. No, this happened to me like 5 or 6 times in my life. And it's always been when I eat really spicy Mexican food. But I always eat spicy Mexican food. But every once in a while, it's like, oh man, something, either the jalapenos or I ate something too early. I know I have a sensitive stomach. Like I can't just take ibuprofen and have to eat, or else, you know. So
yeah.
So yeah, I ate a pepper raw on an empty stomach, and I'll never do that again. I mean, I still kind of feel that little, and you know, I still feel my heart's racing, my body temperature. I feel cold now because I was all sweating and hot, and it's crazy.
Maybe check if you have a fever or something.
Nope, it's just what happens. It's
Oh,
just what
okay.
it for whatever reason. And it's like, and it comes and, lasted 15 minutes this time. It's about right. Five, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. So 15 minutes is right in the middle. And it's just weird. It's just really weird. Why that happens, because I eat spicy stuff all the time. But such is life. Anyways.
My goodness. Well, glad you're okay. Hope it's gone for good.
Until the next time I eat a pepper on an empty stomach, I guess.
Well, I thought you were gonna say that the Range Rover got stolen.
No, man, but I want to drive that thing. Shoot, I've never even been in a
Oh.
Range. So I'm like, man, next chance I get while I'm going out. That was my other thing. I was like, my wife parked on the side. And then she was like, oh, I have bad news. I broke the drip system. And I was like, why are you even driving? I thought the whole point was your mom drove up because they have a bigger car. Because now, apparently her mom had to squeeze in the back because Nadia in the front, her dad in the driver's seat, 2 baby seats in the back, and her mom squeezed in the middle. So it's like, I thought the point was for them to bring the SUV so that you didn't have to squeeze in. So that's okay. It just means that the next time we all go out, I get to drive.
Nice.
All right. Well, how's your week so far?
So far, so good. It's going by really quickly.
Okay. I think you're seeing the wrong slides, right?
That looks right.
Okay. All right.
I think we left off here.
Okay. Yeah, we finished with planned stakeholder engagement. So anything, any thoughts, any questions you had, or you want to just jump right in?
I was gonna reach out because I thought that we didn't cover all of the formulas that I'm nervous about, but I think that comes up like in monitoring and controlling, right?
Yeah.
Okay, like the earn value formulas.
Don't worry, there's only there's only 3 formulas that you actually have to remember. The rest of them are just knowing what SV, schedule variance, and CV, cost variance, just knowing what they are. It's, don't worry at all. By the way, there's no rule that says, and again, everybody always has a problem with this when I first say it, and then by the end they get it. There's no rule that says that you have to answer any math question right and pass the exam. So, I got plenty of people that take the exam and just delay the math questions all the way to the end, and they don't even have enough time, and they just guess and they still pass because it's 1 question, 1 point. So just remember that.
True. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's do another recap. I'll do a shorter recap, but we'll go through the whole piece here. So let me see. Last time I used your project, I want to give you another project from a different perspective. So I'm gonna go with the perspective of an actual project I'm working on now, but some of it will be made up because we didn't do any of this stuff. So I met with the project sponsor, and we figured out what the high level scope is. We needed to create a combined database that included information from both operating units, so that way we could have a combined database for the entire enterprise. And we thought about the high level scope of it, which was to combine those two and get it ready for a future initiative that's coming in 2 years. And so this was also prep for that. We looked at the scope and then we looked at the schedule and the budget and the high level schedules that we wanted to complete by January of 2021. And we knew what the budget was in terms of effort hours from employees. And so they gave me the latitude to be able to deny any changes. But if we do make any changes, I do need to come to them and make those requests. And I met with several other key stakeholders throughout the departments that we would have to work with. We determined what the success criteria would be for this combined database. And then the VP signed it, who's a sponsor, and that now gave me authority to start the project. So then I sat down with those key stakeholders and identified the different departments that would be affected by the work, the different departments that would need to assist with the work. We identified a couple outside vendors. We knew we would have to, get an RFP. And so we knew there was going to be some outside vendors that would be stakeholders. We thought about all the people that were in the department. And then we thought about, the legal and the security team, because, they were going to have to oversee our work as well, and make sure that we were, HIPAA compliant. We're compliant with data loss prevention, et cetera, et cetera. So once we identified all of those stakeholders, we determined using a stakeholder grid who had a lot of power and who had a lot of interest, so we could manage them closely, who had a lot of power but no interest, so we can keep them satisfied, who didn't have much power but were very interested, so we could keep them informed, and who didn't have any power or no interest, and we would put them on a watch list. And we further analyzed those stakeholders, performing stakeholder analysis using the salience model, where we looked at folks who had a sense of urgency, a sense of legitimacy, and a sense of dependency. And we figured out who the dominant stakeholders were in the middle, the dangerous ones who were a combination of powerful and they have a sense of urgency, and then the dependent stakeholders who had a sense of urgency, but they were also dependent. And so from there, we made up with the plan. We came up with certain aspects of the project that could go wrong, like, what if we took longer than we said? What if we were not able to create this database in the fashion that was going to be suitable for their future state? What if we needed more time from some of the resources in these departments? We thought about a lot of those things, and we said, and if those things do pop up, how are these stakeholders likely to react? And then we came up with strategies for, those scenarios if they do happen. And we felt good about it. And then we moved on. And we said, okay, we need to create a project management plan. So after creating that stakeholder register and initiating the project, we're now in planning. And we looked back, the organization has a PMO. So we were able to use their organizational process assets and get templates for the project management plan and all of the subsidiary plans, the scope management plan, the schedule management plan, cost, quality, all of those plans were there. We had templates, they were branded, they were pretty nice. And so all we had to do was go through each one and sort of tweak it based on our project. And that took us a couple days. And when we felt good about, how we were going about, approaching the project, then we felt that document would act as our guide. And we're like, okay, we're good. So we then moved on and we collected requirements. We collected requirements from the key stakeholders, the VP herself, her folks that she designated, from each operating unit that was a lead for the database. We collected requirements from the departments that we would have to work with in terms of what they needed, what information they needed from us. Same thing with the vendors. We collected all those different requirements, the organizational requirements, and in the end, we put them in a traceability matrix. We basically made a spreadsheet that had the requirements in the first column, and then we had the owner and the source in the second one, the business value. We had the test criteria and the definition of done. And so we said, okay, good. We have all of our requirements documentation, including a traceability matrix. And so let's define the scope. So we took a look back at the charter to see what the high level scope, schedule, budget, and risk are. And in there, specifically the high level scope and what the success criteria is. And we use that to then decompose those requirements and those, not decompose, but we use it to define the scope. We use those requirements and we use that charter to then come up with a very detailed document that said what the project is, a new database that combined both operating units throughout the organization. What it wasn't, we weren't going to introduce any new software for this. It was all going to be built on the existing platform that we had within the provider mart. How we were going to do it is that we were looking at all the different fields that they had in the two different databases, and we looked at what they wanted to do. And we had some proof of concept so that people could look at it, and a little UI, a little wireframe, so people can see it, and we could jog their memory, and they could say, yeah, but note about this and what about that. And then we defined the scope. All right, we were able to come up with a document that said what we're doing, how we're doing it, what we're not doing. And then we also put in there how we would get sign off. We looked back at the charter and looked at success criteria and determined that here is the way that we were going to get sign off on our scope. So then we went back to the folks who were actually going to be involved in building it, and we brought them in, and we then decomposed that scope statement into a work breakdown structure, right? We broke it down from its largest piece, and we got to the point where we could no longer use nouns, and we had to use verbs, and we knew we were at the lowest level of our WBS, and we called that work packages. And we assigned a numbering scheme to it, which was known as our code of accounts. And so we felt good about our WBS. Everything was there. We were organized in terms of, where we were going to store contracts, where we were going to get patient information from, where we were going to, have facility information from. All of this stuff. We knew what we were going to do, and it was all broken down, and we're ready to go. So we went back and we looked at the schedule management plan that we already developed earlier. And we said, okay, now how, based on getting this done by Q1 of 2021, how quickly must we work? What type of schedule must we do? And so we decided that we were going to do a hybrid of doing the build in sort of an Agile or a Scrum model, while we would have major releases that would follow, each month. Here's what they could expect from us. And so that was our plan of how we wanted to do it. And so since that was the plan, then we started to define the activities. And we further decomposed each of those work packages into actionable steps in terms of collecting the fields and figuring out the sources of those fields and what other sources existed within the organization. And, how could we build those reports? We figured out all of the activities that need to be done. And then we thought about what order, which ones need to come first, which need to come second. And those are the attributes of those activities. And then we thought about which ones, were considered milestones after looking at those predecessors and successors. And then we also looked at which ones. No, we got that. We got the milestones, we got the attributes, and we had our activity list. And so then once we got that, we felt good. And we said, now let's sequence them out. And we went on to sequence activities and we put them in order. And using those attributes that we found earlier, we saw the predecessors and successors, we put them in order. And then we thought about the relationships. We thought about the start to start, finish to start, finish to finish, start to finish relationships, which parts we could do now where we could start both of these or both had to end. We thought about that. Then we thought about the dependencies, which dependencies were mandatory that we do first. Which ones they were contractually required, or there was just no way for us to get around it. We thought about those discretionary dependencies, when did we want to meet and what time, and, which parts of the database could be done in parallel. We thought about internal and external dependencies, those external dependencies being, HIPAA compliance and data loss prevention. And we then sequenced our activities. And at the end, we had a network schedule diagram. And so we felt good about that. So we said, all right, let's now go and estimate how long it's going to take. And we sat down with everybody. We sat down with the back-end developers, and they told us how long it would, likely take them to do that. We sat down with the analysts, and they told us how long it would likely take to sit down with the people from the business to gather, how they're actually using the database and how they would view it, and what they expected from the reports and then the new views. And so we sat down with those people who were going to do all those things, and we asked them to give us their best estimates. In some senses, they analogously estimated. They're like, yeah, this is kind of like the same work we do all the time, and this is how long it takes. In other cases, they used some sort of historical statistical measure to parametrically estimate and say, yeah, it takes about 10 minutes to do a unit, and you need 10 units, so it'll take about 100 minutes. Some of them, they just bottom up estimated. They're like, well, we really don't know. We have to just really look and see how many of these fields that you have that require the ability to have two-way information. And they just had the bottom up estimate. And then we had some where we took averages, of how long it would take for testing. And in some senses, instead of using the simple or triangular average of a 3-point estimate, we then went and used beta or PERT so we could find confidence intervals. And we noted that when we did the optimistic plus pessimistic was most likely and divided by 3 previously, that now if we did the most likely by 4 and add up the optimistic and the pessimistic, now if we divide it by 6, that gave us an EAC that was more weighted to the most likely. And if we took that pessimistic minus optimistic and divided by 6, that gave us a standard deviation. And then we knew that 1, 2, 3, and 6 standard deviations respectively is 68.26. And we'll know that because you got 6 on one end, 6 on the other end. 8 minus 2 is 6. I don't know a way for you to figure out that, but 68.26. We noted that 2 standard deviations was 95.46. And we said, oh, we can remember that because 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do you appreciate? 2 sigma. 2 sigma ends in a 4, 6. What's between a 4 and a 6? A 5. 9, 5, 4, 6. And we said, oh, and 3 standard deviations. How are we going to remember that? 99.73. There's a 3 on the end. 7 plus 3 is 10, or getting to the 100. I know the math doesn't really work that way, but 99.73. 3 sigma ends in a 3. And then we remember that 6 sigma, 6 digits. 5 9s and a 7. 99.9997. 6 sigma, 6 digits. And so we said, okay, great. We have all of our estimates. And in some cases, we wanted to know how long it would actually take to do testing. And so we were able to do Monte Carlo and run tens of thousands of simulations and give us an estimate. In some cases, we thought about contingency reserves and reserve analysis. We wanted to make sure that we either set a percentage of the time or a number of periods. And once we got all that, we had our activity durations estimates, right? Then we went on to developing the schedule. And we said, we're going to do critical path. And so we wanted to perform schedule network analysis using activity on node and not activity on arrow, because activity on arrow only allows you for a finish to start relationship, but activity on node gives you all 4. So therefore we did critical path, and we did a forward and backwards pass throughout the project. We took the early start plus the duration, and we made that the early finish. Then when we moved on to the next column of activities, we looked back to see how many predecessor activities we had. And it didn't matter if it had 1 or 1,000. We took the one that finished on the latest day or the biggest number, and we carried that when we did the forward pass. And then we did that early start plus duration equals early finish. And we did that all the way to the end. We set the late finish equal to the early finish. And then we did late finish minus duration, and that equaled the late start. And we did that. And then we moved on to the next column. We looked forward and we said, how many successor activities? And it didn't matter if there was 1 or 100. We took the smallest number, because now we're doing a backwards pass, and we use that to be the late finish. And then we did late finish minus duration equals late start. And we did that, and we did again, another backwards pass until we got all the way to the end. Then we subtracted the late start from the early start, or the late finish from the early finish, and we found float. And then we knew that float was the amount of time that we could delay any one activity without delaying the project. And we thought about total float, how it was shared along the path, right? You pick a path, and whatever activity has the highest float number, that becomes the total float. So if you had a path with 5 activities and 2 of them said 3 and the other 3 had 2, well, you would not have 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. You would just have a total float of 3. You would have picked the value that's highest on that path, and that becomes the total float. And so after we thought about float and total float, we were able to figure out the critical path, because we noted that it was the longest chain of activities with the least amount of float, normally 0. And the reason why we had to remember that normally 0 is because when we first create this critical path, there better be 0, because we set the early finish equal to the late finish, and we worked backwards. But we do recognize that as we start running the project, we could get delays somewhere, even on the critical path. And now the critical path is just the longest chain of activities with the least amount of float. It could have 1, 2, every number of days of float, but just the least amount of float. And we ran Monte Carlo again to do simulations of the schedule. We did reserve analysis again, just in case there's any additional risk. And then we came up with the schedule. That was our output. We also had schedule data as an output. And those are all those Monte Carlo simulations. Those were all the standard deviation numbers that we maybe didn't choose, but all that information was in schedule data. And so we said, all right, we have a very detailed schedule. We need to give something to management. And we made a modified version that we could get approved. And that's what we use to get sign off. And that became our schedule baseline. So we said, all right, let's figure out how much this puppy's going to cost. And we went down and we used the same estimating techniques, analogous, really quick but inaccurate, parametric, employ some statistical measure, bottom up, longest, most expensive, but most accurate, and then 3-point, whether it was simple, triangular, or beta or PERT to give us confidence intervals. We used those same estimating techniques and we came up with cost estimates. And we did reserve analysis. We did reserve analysis to make sure that we could add a percentage or a set number. We then went on to determine a budget. And when there we went to aggregate, we went to cost aggregate everything up. So we took all of our estimates, any invoices for materials, machines, and supplies, any ongoing contracts that we had, we aggregated them all up, and we put contingency reserves on top of those again because they all had reserves built into them. Then we put a contingency reserve on top for the whole work package, and that became known as the cost baseline. And that's what we as project managers own because it has contingency reserves, CNC. So it's the cost baseline. We don't own the project budget, which contains management reserves, and that's what management owns. So we knew our cost baseline, and we said, okay, great. We thought about funding limit reconciliation. We're like, when might we need more money than what you're going to allocate? Or when might we need less money than you're going to allocate? We thought about that. We did the what if scenario analysis again. And having hit all of those tools and techniques, we felt good, and we came with an output of the budget. So we said, how are we going to make sure that this database is going to serve everybody with consistency? How can we plan for quality? And so we made sure that we built in processes that would assure that people would build the database in the same manner to specs, that would put transparency in so that way once deliverables or small work packages within the software is complete, folks can go and test it and provide feedback. And we felt good about that. And so we had a plan, quality management plan, and the other output along with the quality management plan were the metrics. So we said, we got to talk to everybody. And who are those people going to be? So we went to our resource management plan and we determined who we were going to get in-house and who we were going to source outside. And then we thought about all the materials and supplies that we might need, conference rooms, things like that. And we came up with a plan that included a staffing plan, how we're going to get people on the project, a release plan, how we would offboard people. We got all those things. We said, all right, let's estimate the resources. And we used the same estimating techniques, parametric, quicker than analogous, quicker than parametric, but less accurate. Bottom up, slower than both, but more accurate. And then the 2 3-point types is simple or beta so that you can get confidence intervals. And we came up with the resource breakdown structure. And we noted, wow, there's a work breakdown structure, now a resource breakdown structure. So we note that PMI likes the work breakdown structures. So we had a breakdown structure for resources, and we had our management plan. So we estimated those resources. We estimated the resources, and we had the chart that had everybody in it. And we felt good about this resource breakdown structure, and we had our estimated activity resources. We then went on to plan how we communicate with everybody. And so we came up with the communications management plan that said, here's when we were going to send messages to a specific person or a group of people in a push. Here's when we were going to put our information up on the wall or up on SharePoint so people can go pull it when they wanted to. And here's when we were going to have a very interactive conversation because I needed your immediate feedback. We made a note of when those would be verbal and when it would be written, when it would be formal or when it would be informal. And then we thought about technology as the driver for our communication. We said technology is going to help get our message across to people. So we had our communications management plan, and then we looked at risk. And we already had the risk management plan because we did that effort earlier today. And so we identified risk, and we looked for risk everywhere. We looked in our plans, right? There was risk in our documents. They may not be good. There's risk in the corporate contracts. They have unfavorable language. And so we developed that risk register by identifying risk in all of those areas that we could. And then we said, okay, great, let's qualify those risks. And so we multiplied the probability times the impact. And from there, we said, okay, risks that score really low on the risk register on the probability impact matrix, we would put those on a watch list, passively accept. The risks that scored a little bit higher, we would actively accept those. And so we would put away money, contingency reserves. The risk that were sort of in the middle, we would mitigate those. We'd take some action or some activity to minimize the probability and or the impact. And then the last one, there's nothing to do with those. Nothing to do with those risks. Do you remember?
Except, wait.
No, we said we'll avoid them. We'll avoid them. It was close. We avoided them. Then we remembered, nope, those threats that scored highest, we couldn't do anything. We gotta avoid those risks. And so we said, okay, great. We gotta change something. We'll avoid those threats that score high. We will mitigate those threats that are in the middle. And the two bottom ones we'll actively accept by putting contingency reserves, or we'll passively accept by putting them on the watch list. And we noted the same thing for the opportunities. Those opportunities that score high, we would exploit. Those that scored in the middle, we would enhance. Those that scored the lowest on the low two ends, we would either actively put away money and accept them, or we would passively accept them and put them on a watch list. And we noted that we could also escalate both types of risk. So we then said, let's now qualify these risks. Now that we've qualified the risk, let's quantify the risk. And so we did quantitative risk analysis, where now we turned that impact into days lost or scope added. And ultimately we said, you know what? Day and scope, time and scope is going to increase cost. So let's just look at it in terms of cost. And so when we quantified each of these risks, we came up with an expected monetary value, either by multiplying the probability of occurrence by its impact in dollars, or by using a decision tree, where we would have a scenario A, a scenario B, and scenario A would have case 1 and case 2. You would subtract out your cost and then multiply it by the percentage, get a number, subtract out your cost, multiply it by the percentage, get a number, and then add them together. And then you do the same thing for scenario B. Case 1, case 2, subtract out your cost, multiply it by the percentage, subtract out your cost, multiply it by the percentage, add the two numbers together. And then we pick the higher of the two. And that was using our decision tree, right? We didn't forget about the tornado diagram, right? This displays the results of a sensitivity analysis, and it kind of looks like a funnel. So we didn't forget that one. And we updated the risk register, including the risk report that now said, you know, where these risks are coming from and what's our probability of occurrence to actually complete the project. And then we planned risk responses. And we thought about this, and we're like, oh, we already did this. We already know we're going to go to the ATM for threats, because they cost us money. Threats cost us a lot of money. It costs us to go to the bank. We have to go to the ATM. We can avoid, transfer, or mitigate. We can avoid a threat by doing something different. We can transfer it by shifting it to a third party, like an insurance contract, or we can mitigate a threat by taking some action or activity that will either minimize the probability of occurrence and or impact. So threats cause us to go to the ATM, avoid, transfer, mitigate. Or we could see the money. Opportunities allow us to see the money. We get to share, enhance, and exploit, right? If we want to share, we'll bring in a third party, just like when we transfer a threat. If we share in an opportunity, bring in a third party. We can enhance, just like when you mitigate. In this case, for an opportunity, we're going to ensure that we can take advantage, or we will exploit. Just like when you avoid a threat and you do change something to make it different, we will change whatever our course of path is to pursue this opportunity. So we felt good about that. And we updated our risk report. We noted that we now have risk owners, and we said, yep, the project manager is not responsible in these instances for responding to a risk response and implementing it. The risk owner is responsible for implementing a risk response when the time is appropriate. So we said, okay, cool. Let's go and figure out how we're going to buy stuff. And so we went on to plan our procurement. And as we're planning our procurement, we noted when we would do stuff in-house or when we would do it outside. And that was our make or buy analysis, so that we could, as a tool and technique, we could then determine the output of make or buy decisions. We also thought about contract types, and we thought about cost reimbursable contracts being risky to the seller, but noted that time and materials, aka hourly, and firm fixed price were most risky to, time and materials, cost reimbursable, risky to the buyer, and then firm fixed price contracts are risky to the seller. So we noted that. We noted the FFP, firm fixed price, the FPIF, fixed price with incentive fee, the FPEPA, fixed price with economic price adjustment. Those are all risky to the seller. And then we noted the CPPC, cost plus percentage of cost, the CPIC, the cost plus incentive fee, CPAC, cost plus award fee. And we said, okay, great. We know each of these contract types. We know that we can use contract types to shift risk in a given project. And once we had the metrics, we were good to go. Then we said, you know what? Now that we've identified all these stakeholders and we came up with strategies for what they do if they react in a certain way, let's make a plan on making sure that they stay engaged and they stay participating and they know what's going on in the project. And so we went back to our OPAs and we looked at our stakeholder management plan and we tweaked it to make sure that it fit for our stakeholders in the best manner. And then when we were done, because it was such a huge PMI project, we got sign off from the sponsor, key stakeholders, the team members, and you yourself signed it, those 4 entities. And then we were off to execution.
Okay. Wait, so the last thing you said, is that the stakeholder engagement plan that everyone has to sign, or
It's
something else?
It's the project management plan.
Oh, the whole thing. Okay.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, we warm?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me fill up my water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Now it's time to execute. So moving forward, things will be moving forward. You're not going to see a whole lot of new, like outputs or tools and techniques because you've seen them on planning. Right? We've pulled out all the stops in planning. So now when it's time to execute this next part of the course, we're going to focus a lot on, tips and tricks and how I shouldn't say tips and tricks, tools and techniques, right? You just use PMI terminology. We're going to focus on tools and techniques and how you manage a team, how you manage conflict, how you build a team up, how you send information out, you know, but we're literally here. We're just going to follow the plan. So everything that we've done, we're just going to now go follow it. And then when we get to monitor controlling, which will probably be tomorrow in the next session, at that point, we will then look at tracking our work, right? So now that we're going to execute, when we get to monitor controls like variance analysis, like we had a plan and we're here today. And then based on where we're at today, whether we're ahead of schedule, behind schedule, over budget, under budget, can you forecast what the project will look like tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, right? So that's what monitoring controlling is like. It's like, here we are today, we had a plan, and based on the plan, where will we be in the future? All right, but for right now, we're now just going to execute. We're just going to follow the plan. So our whole goal here, oh, and I forgot to load the iPad up, but I can get that going at the same time. Our whole job here is to produce deliverables. That's really what we want to be doing in this piece here. All right, we want to obtain, develop, and manage a team and resources and procurement so that we can complete all the work. And by completing all the work, we mean producing all the deliverables. Okay. And we want to complete the work defined in a project management plan to satisfy the project requirements at the quality standards demanded. Is my iPad not working? Something happened. It was 100% just an hour ago. Yeah, what happened? Oh, it drained something. Wow, that's weird. That's weird. Okay. Well, when in doubt, I have my phone. Although I don't know where my phone is now. Yikes. Here, I believe I could still do it with this phone. Let's go to Keynote. Oh, yep, I might be able to. No, not on this phone. Okay, 1 second, Karan, because it'll be much better if I can, do all the stuff on the screen.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, that's really, really weird that happened, but while we wait for that, let's just open Keynote here. Is Wi-Fi on my laptop? Yes, it is. Let's plug in directly. See what we get. Continue. Then link. Oh yeah, because this one's not linked. Okay. Let me just link it and think about that.
No problem. I'm just gonna send you my friend's name for the referral for a future bootcamp course right now, so I don't forget.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I need to go to preferences, remote. Yeah, there we go. iPhone link. 2647. Confirm. Confirm. All right. And you know what? Since I'm here, does this iPad have Keynote on it as well? Yes, it does. this one's not connected to the net. Okay, that's okay. At least I can do this for now. Wi-Fi on. Okay. If I get this iPad connected, we're in the game.
Cool.
So, do I need to do another link? iPhone. It's looking for it. Let's go back here. Remote. iPad. Oh, it's looking for my old MacBook. So I think I have to go here. Okay, if I don't get it in 30 seconds, I give up. I'm gonna make you wait too long. There it goes. Devices. Add a device. Okay. There we go. Link. 5757. Confirm. All right. Boom. Play the show. Sweet. And you see the screen?
Yep.
All right. Back in business. Okay. So, oh, but where's the presentation? Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, our whole goal is to obtain, develop, and manage a team and resources so that they can produce the deliverables, which means AKA complete the work defined in our plan. And so there you see deliverables. I want you to make a note. We've been talking about work performance data and then information becomes a report. I mentioned that earlier. The only place that we get work performance data is during execution, specifically direct and manage the project team. It's the only place that you get data and deliverables. And it makes sense. It comes from this process up here. It makes sense because that's the only place where you're actually doing the work, direct and manage project work. All right. So you get data and then you get deliverables out of that process as an output. It's the only place. So just make a note somewhere. Only place that we get data and deliverables are from direct and managed project work.
Okay.
And so here we go. Now here's direct and managed project work. We see here key outputs, the data, the deliverables themselves, and then we may get some requests for change, some lessons learned. We get an issue log here as well. Do you keep an issue log at your organization?
Yeah.
What's in your issue log?
Like open Jira tickets for customers with that hit product bugs.
So for PMI, that would be considered your change log. And those bugs either get changed or they don't, right? They either become an approved change and you fix them. For PMI, the issue log for PMI is issues between stakeholders. Very few people in our industry keep something like this. Like, oh, this stakeholder and that stakeholder had an issue, or that person didn't like that person, or this group is fighting with that group. We don't tend to keep those types of things and document them. But for the exam, just know that's what the issue log is. It's for areas of disagreement between stakeholders, not necessarily about the project. Any issues with the project will end up in the change log as a change request. All right, so let's look at the processes that are both planned project activities and approved change requests, because those can become an input, and I'll show you a picture of that soon. And we must be flexible to tailor the management approach. Remember that word tailor, right? PMI says to tailor our projects. And integration management and executing focuses on both using existing and creating and recording new knowledge. So that's where we have managed project knowledge. PMI expects us as project managers to understand how to capture new information that we learn as a result of executing activities to achieve the project, and then putting it somewhere so that other people within the organization will be able to use it. So here we go, direct and managed project work. where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, right? It's where it's time to do, less talking, more doing. So, whoops, excuse me. I'm trying to get this little picture, the Zoom picture out the way. There we go. So in this process, it's all about making sure that you manage a team to complete all the activities, which ultimately means you'll produce the deliverables. All right. Now, deliverables and work performance data are used in the monitor and controlling process group. So we'll take input. Let me go back here real quick. If I show you this slide, it doesn't have the monitor and controlling. Here we go. So you get work performance data as an output from directly manage a team. Work performance data is an input to all of these processes. Well, with the exception of monitor control work, it's a input into perform integrated change control, all the way down to monitor stakeholder engagement. So each of these take work performance data as an input, and then as an output, you get work performance information. So data in, information out. Data in, information out. All of these processes give work performance information as an output. That work performance information becomes an input to monitor and control project work. So now,
Hello? Test. I think you dropped off, CJ. I can't hear you right now. Oh, I can hear you right now. Yep.
yeah, something happened. I lost power. Okay. What's the last thing you heard me say?
Work performance data is an input in all of, I wasn't sure if you were pointing at executing or monitoring and controlling.
Okay.
And then the output is work performance information.
Okay, good. So data in, information out. Then I got to go here and go back. All right, so work performance information, data in, and work performance information out. Then, what's wrong with the slide?
In the executing process group?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Work performance data is an output here.
Okay.
And then it becomes an input to all of these processes. All of these processes here take work performance data as an input, and they give you work performance information as an output.
Okay.
So data in, information out. Data in, information out. All these data is an input, information becomes an output. That information, right, if you have data coming into all of these here,
Mm-hmm.
all right, that work performance data then becomes information. All of these then become an input to monitor and control project work. And then the output is a work performance report. All right, so you got work performance data as an output here, becomes an input to all these. It becomes work performance information as an output. All of these work performance information becomes an input to monitor and control the work. And then the output becomes a work performance report. But it does not end there with PMI. That report, so think of it like this. Your teammates give you the raw data. Oh, I've completed this much, Cara, and I've done this much, or this much is done, or I use this many hours. And then you take that data and you turn it into, we're this much complete. We have this percentage error rate, right? That becomes work performance information. It's analyzed in context within a specific knowledge area. Then when you are monitoring and controlling the project, you then take all of that information that you know about being X% complete and this many people in this many hours. You then take all of that and you then create a work performance report. You'll take that information as an input, and then as an output, you'll create a work performance report. That work performance report will then become an input to manage communications. And the output will be a project communication. So I will give you a slide that will show you how data, becomes information, which becomes a report, which becomes a project communication.
Okay.
But does that kind of flow make sense? Data becomes information becomes a report. The report then gets communicated to stakeholders as project information or project communication.
I think so. Can I attempt to paraphrase that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Work performance data is an output of the executing processes and becomes an input to all of the monitoring and controlling processes. And then work performance information is an output of all process and monitoring and controlling. And then the work performance report is an output, but of monitoring and controlling processes, but is an input to manage communications.
Close. Close. Close.
Okay, I'll
Very
wait for that
close.
slide. CJ, if you're saying something, I can't hear anything.
Yeah, it keeps losing. I don't know why it's doing this. Why tonight? Always something. This laptop's only like 2 months old. Apple, I'm so sad. I've taken pictures of all the stuff, videos. I've tweeted them thinking that like public shaming them would put pressure. No, they're just like, call Apple Care. I'm like, man. Seriously, I think I got a lemon computer because I hear the fan just, kick on and start running. I'm like, man, I'm not like doing video editing or anything. Why is this? Oh, anyway.
Yeah, I hear the best machines are
let's show
like
you.
2014.
We'll see. I bought my first MacBook in October of 2015, and it just recently died, which is why I just bought a new one. So I mean, for 5 years, it wasn't bad. That was my workhorse. I used it every day. I mean, that machine ran every day. It was docked because I have like a workstation, so it was a workhorse. But something happened with the screen. It like I don't know. It started losing all the colors. It would give me like reds and greens. Like this would be all hazy. And even if I was, displaying on a monitor, so something was wrong with it. They wanted $300 to fix it, and then even then it was only going to be like a 30-day guarantee. And it was like, then they said my battery was swollen and all that. I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy a new laptop. So I bought a brand new laptop, the best that you can get. Like, I always do that. It's got the most brand. I pay for like the most everything, whatever the thing is. Just give me the highest. And no, here we are with these little issues. Yeah, there's sometimes with the mouse, like I can't click. I can move the mouse, but if I click on the mouse, like nothing happens. Oh, it's just frustrating. All right, let me pull up what I want to show you. I'm going to show it to you now. Are my All right, let's disconnect, reconnect this. Okay, should recognize hard drives, not yet. Okay, after our break, I'll pull them up. During our break, I'll pull them up and get them ready.
Okay.
Something funky going on. I'll just have to reboot or something. But for now, we'll continue on.
Okay.
Okay, so nope, that's not where I want to be. Oh boy, how do I exit out of this? Technical difficulties today. All right. We're just gonna have to do this regular, which is fine. Oh, it decided to pop up, and let's see if this will work. And then let's see if this works. Oh, okay. All right. Newer iPads working. I think the older iPad was like making everything. I don't know, something. Anyways, let's just go. All right. So we were in executing. We talked about data becoming information, becoming a report, right? And that's where we see deliverables and work performance data are used as inputs, monitoring, and controlling. Okay. So now here's the tools and techniques that we're looking at. Expert judgment, our project management information system, and meetings. Those are the three tools and techniques that we use with PMI in order to produce deliverables. So if you think about it, you take a charter, right? Well, it's always going to be our North Star, and then all the documents that we've created thus far, right? And that's not an exhaustive list. That's just, just showing you there. But we're going to take everything that we've created, right? And then we're going to look at EEFs and OPAs because those are going to factor into, how we meet with people. Do we have to get a conference room? Can we just go hijack the room, or do we really have to book it because someone might be coming in, right? We got to think about all that. And then we use our expert judgment. We use some sort of tool or system, to manage a team along with meetings. And then we capture people's information, and that's where the data comes from. I shouldn't call it information. We capture people's data, their actual status. We then sometimes we get requests for change. We may have issues. We may update our approach, our documents, or our OPAs. Let's take a look. Whoops. So the deliverables, this is the key output, the deliverables themselves. That's what we're trying to get. Unique and verifiable. Just like a project needs to be unique and temporary, the deliverables need to be unique and verifiable. Verifiable meaning I can test it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then you may get requests for change. You're going to get data, the raw observations that we see there, the raw observations and measurements, how long they took, how much work did I actually get done. Only the team members can get you that. So this is the only process that we get data from. And then we can update our plans and update our documents. All right. So problems are inevitable in every project. The issue log is used to track issues as they are investigated and resolved. And remember, these problems are between stakeholders. Okay. If there's technical problems, like something doesn't work, we need to fix it. For PMI, that goes into the change log. It's like, oh, make a change request. Please fix this. As an input, we need the plan, and we need, if any change requests have been approved, we need those approved change requests so that we can understand, what it is that needs to take place. Any documents that are going to help us. And we use our expert judgment, right? We leverage the team's expert judgment, really, right? In this case, we're experts in gathering the team, creating a plan, keeping them organized, keeping them executing, I should say. And then we'll use some tool, to display the work, and, people can put their stuff in, and we're all sort of on the same page. And then we have all kinds of meetings, kickoff meetings, progress meetings, technical problem solving, sprint planning. So all of those things are there. But the project manager and the team must actively manage both plan work and approve change requests. So just remember that, right? You have work that's coming in, but then you have work that the sponsor or somebody that's a key stakeholder said, hey, can you change this thing? We don't like it. So here is our first case study.
Okay.
Oh, what happened there? Let's click that.
All right.
And keep in mind, you read of what would be like maybe three questions worth. It's about, the first two paragraphs is one, the second two is another, and the last three would be another question. And just in terms of reading them out.
Okay. And was that like 5 minutes or something?
I didn't time
less?
it. I was like, man, I should have timed it. But no, I thought it was more like 2.5 or 3. Time
Okay.
seems like it's really long, but it's not. Trust me, as a back in the day, I used to box, and in a 3-minute round is forever. And in that last 30 seconds, that seems like a whole minute. So the time moves very, very slow.
Yeah, it's just
right,
all the
which
suspense
output
was killing me.
Oh,
The story
So which
is like
output
so
produced-
dramatic.
and you know what though? It's funny because it's this is based on a real life story, by the way. So just so you know, so that's a
Really?
real project that you're reading about.
Mhm.
Although the names have been changed to protect the innocent. All right, which output produced by the perform integrated change control process is a key input for the direct and managed project work process?
Oh, we didn't go over that process yet. Oh, right. The perform integrated change control.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
But you know what that is, right? You kind of get it.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's get the change request approved. That's what that process is. We'll deep dive into it, but that's all it is. Go get your change request approved.
Okay. Okay.
Which of these
Yeah.
you think is a key input for helping the team produce deliverables? Because that's what you're doing in direct and managed project work.
D.
Why D?
That way, when you're executing, you can initiate the change request.
Okay. And which project document should John use to record the problems, the gaps, inconsistencies, or conflicts that occur during the direct and managed project work process?
B.
You said B?
Yeah.
Okay. And then which process will be used to evaluate and approve the project deliverables produced by direct and managed project work? Right. Evaluate and approve that they meet the requirements specified by the stakeholders. Now, we haven't talked about this one either, but let's see if you can if you can backdoor your way into it.
D. Sorry.
Why D?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a look.
D. I don't know why. Oh.
That's okay.
Dang it.
Let's talk about these. So you got D right. You got the first one, which was D. The approved change request. Right? Because only if it's approved, you would make the change request during execution. Then during monitor control, you get this approved during perform integrated change control, but it becomes an input into execution. So it's another example of how we jump back and forth between process groups, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing that now.
Right. So you got the issue log, because by the way, we could be executing, but we might not be 100% fully done planning.
Okay.
So, right. Okay. And then which process will be used to evaluate and approve that the project deliverables produced by direct and managed project work meet the requirements specified by key stakeholders? Soon enough, you'll be able to read this and say, which process will be used to evaluate and approve deliverables that meet requirements And then you'll just, okay, deliverables that meet requirements. That's really what they want, because that's the name of a process. All right. And we know who key stakeholders are. So we want to know which process evaluates and approved that project deliverables meet the requirements. And that will be your control quality or quality control. And we'll get to those in quality, but that's deliverable focus. That's testing and inspecting. That in the cost of quality, if you remember, we had, and I didn't do this in my recap. We didn't have, we had internal, with the cost of conformance, cost of non-conformance, and you have preventative costs and appraisal costs. Preventative, where you give all the people tools, the time to do it right, you document the processes and you train them. And then appraisal cost, where we test and inspect, and we even do destructive testing loss. And then you had the cost of non-conformance, which was internal failure, which was, you had internal failures and external failures, yes. And then in internal failures, you could scrap or rework. And in external failures, you would have liabilities, lost work, or warranty work, lost business or warranty work. My mind is not working tonight. So anyways, that is considered an appraisal cost. In the cost of quality, the cost of conformance, it's an appraisal cost. That's what quality control is. Those are the activities that are focused on a deliverable. And then we're going to see quality assurance in execution. That is making sure that we're doing things the right way, that we're following the right processes. Because if we do that, then we're not likely to get any bad deliverables when they get tested. So quality assurance, quality control, assurance is process focused, control is deliverable focused. So now let's look at managed project knowledge. All right, so this is where you want to leverage past organizational knowledge, and past organizational knowledge can be what happened last week, right? We're now summing up what we did last week in our project work, and we're going to use that to improve outcomes and record valuable experiences for future use, right? So it doesn't have to be like some years ago, but it just could be yesterday. That's what past organizational knowledge is. And then we're going to use that existing knowledge and create new knowledge. So this is where we say, okay, based on what happened there, we can assume, or we've learned that if we do X, Y, and Z, then 1, 2, and 3 will happen, something like that. So that's where this is a new process for version 6, by the way. I mean, that doesn't mean much to you, but in the grand scheme of things, it's PMI listening to us in the project management field and recognizing that we as project managers do this as well. We don't just, directly manage a team, but we actually manage the knowledge that team's coming up with, and we're documenting it for future use. So now there's explicit knowledge, easy to explain, right? We can, give somebody a book and they can learn all that explicit knowledge, right? So explicit knowledge is, that's telling somebody that, yes, when you manage project knowledge, you're supposed to capture all the information on the team. But tacit knowledge is more like, well, it's not that simple. It's, are you doing lessons learned? Are you doing retrospectives? If not, then are you meeting with people? And do you have a built-in process that, you can document and record this stuff? Tacit knowledge you would have to have been a project manager and been in those scenarios. So that way you can explain it to people. So that's the difference between the two. Explicit knowledge, easy. Tacit knowledge, you got to have experiences. And then successful knowledge management just relies on you creating that environment, right? A lot of times we have to make sure that we make sure that people are comfortable saying what they need to say. So you have the alphas that are always speaking. Sometimes you got to shut those people down so that the B folks in the back, or you may have to shut the A folks down and then pull it out of the B folks too. So, you got to create that environment where everybody's comfortable. They're open. It's a safe space. Give people tools. This is where, like, if you're using Jira, do you guys use Confluence as well?
Yeah.
Yep. And do you use Slack?
We do.
Yep. That's the ultimate stack right there. I have not found, I say 2013 when we were using that. And I was like, man, this is the best thing. And I haven't found anything better than that since.
It's the best.
So if you have tools like that, well, then everybody can go to Confluence and they can, use sort of like it's almost like a wiki, right? So that's the idea, is like give people a way to access, information, and then use techniques that help to codify this tacit knowledge, meaning how do we make sense of it? How do we put it into order? How do we, say what this is and what it isn't and what it's useful for? All right. So it's more than lessons learned. It's way more than lessons learned. It's on developing this explicit and tacit knowledge. So notice the output, another register. That's the output that's specific to this process. You could potentially get updates to your plan and updates to your OPAs, but the specific output here is the lessons learned register. So just like a risk register, a stakeholder register, this is a lessons learned register. And registers meaning living, breathing documents that we will update on an ongoing basis and regularly consult. Right? That's the PMI terminology. We're going to update this document all the time, and we're going to consult it all the time. Right now, in order to get that, we'll look at these tools and techniques, and we'll utilize these inputs. Let's jump in. All right. So lessons learned register. I don't think anybody has one that looks like this, but here's just a standard way to do it. An Excel spreadsheet's one of the best. And I don't think I mentioned this, why I always say that. When managing a project, an Excel spreadsheet is the best, because many times in organizations, they don't have Jira and Confluence or Slack, or you're working with people who may not even know that. So like for me as a consultant coming in, everybody has a license for Microsoft Excel and everybody kind of knows how to use it. So I can create one workbook that has like 15 sheets in it. In each sheet, a charter, a schedule, a budget, right? And now I just have one file. So just paying that forward like 1 p.m. to the next. Like if you go other places or you want to create something, Excel is probably the most powerful tool to use so far. I mean, as a do it all,
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to take EEFs, and we are under the control of the different knowledge experts that exist at an organization, right? We don't have control over the knowledge experts. So that's why that's an EEF. It's out of our control. It's just part of the environment, whether a lack of or an abundance of. OPAs, we take those into account as well, because there's probably some place that we should be storing this information. So that would be an OPA. All right, we'll take any plans or documents that would help to determine like, what do we need to know? What's going to really help this project? So you see, the plans or documents there, any EEFs, right? This could also be like locale. This could also be, are we going to meet in a room, or do we have a place for us to all store information and gather? Those are EEFs, out of our control as PMs. And then we use OPAs, right? Not a lot of PMs have access to employee training records and things like that. But if you do, it's always good to try to, see where they're at and try to, give them more, right? Make them a better version of themselves. So successful PMs use information management tools and interpersonal skills. Right? You can't just be the dry robot and say, here's our spot, this is what we're going to do. You got to kind of like, bring a little flavor to it. So we have information management tools. In this case, you guys have, you have your Confluence, right? That's sort of like going to be your tool for there. I mean, even within Jira, I mean, if you wanted to put notes and stuff in for a specific task, but for the most part, like that's probably what you would use. Maybe some combination of that with like either OneDrive or SharePoint or some other repository, right? But that's where that would exist. And then you have your interpersonal skills, right? Active listening. One of the biggest things we do as PMs is we will answer people's questions before they're finished asking. We will finish their sentences, because we work with a bunch of people and we get asked the same types of questions, or we tend to anticipate, and people are the same. So if one person said this, the next person is likely to ask the same thing. We have to fight that. We have to fight it very, very hard. Don't answer anybody's sentence. Don't finish their sentence. Don't answer the question before they're done. Hear them out and say something like, well, if I hear you correctly, you're saying, or if I understand you, I'm hearing, right? You give them sort of that feedback, and that's sort of the definition of active listening. And as an aside to that, in addition, I should say, that's actually one of the best tools that I use in terms of like leading without power, because people want to be heard. So oftentimes, I will make sure I listen to them. I listen to them intently, make eye contact. I'll ask lots of questions about what they're talking about, make sure I totally understand it, especially if I'm going to say no. I'm never going to give a blank no. All right. So just some advice to you. Like if you're going to tell somebody no, and it's going to crush their world, I'll ask them a whole lot of questions, and I'll break a whole lot of things down so that they can understand, oh, I see why he's saying no, or I see why this would be a no. All All right. And then leadership, networking, political awareness. These are all sort of subjective things. They mean one thing at a company, another thing at another. And so that's why PMI is not going to force you to memorize this. They're just going to say, use interpersonal skills. But that really means sort of all of this, right? So now that we're done directing and managing it, we're not done, but we're the team's rolling, we're managing knowledge. We're now going to think about quality management. In this sense, quality assurance, which PMI is now calling manage quality, just so that they could have manage this and manage, right? They want to have the sort of the words be the same, but this is what's known as quality assurance in the field. All right, so we're going to implement these activities as defined in our plan. I'm off a little bit with my thing, maybe. Okay, so it's just, I got to go one line down. Okay, and then the key output here, a quality report, just like the risk report, which was a summary of the amount of risk and the amount of threats and opportunities and where they come and a probabilistic, number to complete the project. We also get a quality report that says, here's the amount of defects and here's, our test scores and, here's how likely we are to produce a product with, that's going to meet its requirements with the level of consistency the customer requires. All right, so we'll get the test and evaluation documents as well. And then any requests for change. Sort of like, hey, this wasn't built right, please fix it. So what we're looking here, and these requests for change, is typically we're talking about the process because we're not talking about the product here. So if there's any change requests that come out of quality assurance, it's going to be something like, please change the tool, please provide me a different metric, please, speed something up or slow it down, turn the heat up or down, something like that. So that's usually the types of change requests that we see from here. We use this information to determine where we take corrective action. And those corrective actions would be change the process so that we can assure that we no longer get defects that need to be corrected, right? So you have preventative actions and corrective actions, right? The quality report will tell us where the corrective actions need to be. And then we take that information and we bring it right back into this process to say, how can we change the process so that way we can get preventative actions and we no longer get those defects. So let's take a look. Manage quality. So this process translates, meaning it takes what's in our quality management plan and it creates actions for people. It says that do it in this manner, not in that manner. It's sort of like quality assurance is the idea that you're building in dev, in a sandbox or in a local environment. You move it to a test environment that is now, part of the tree, which then goes to a QA, to a staging, to prod, right? If you don't follow that process, it doesn't mean that you will get an error, but you're more likely to have errors if you just create something and you're making changes to a live production environment. All right, so that's what quality assurance is. It's just saying, hey, slow your roll. We have checks and balances here. Please do things the right way. All right, so it's a set of planned and systematic acts. That's one of the best ways to look at it. A set of planned and systematic acts.
What was the last thing you said? You're kind of breaking up.
Oh, I was that it's a set of planned and systematic acts?
Yes. Was there something after that?
Okay. No, but let me just, I don't know. Let me, I kind of just teach, Karen. I'm like, so let me say it again in a different way.
Okay.
The idea here is that this is about our processes. All right. So we're looking at things in a way that says, let's translate what we need to do to meet the requirements with consistency into actions that say, hey, please do this in a different way. Please make sure that, you're using this tool. Please make sure that you're using Selenium or Jenkins or whatever it is that you may be doing for testing, right? That's the idea there. It's like, we have to do things in the right way. Then the idea is that everybody is responsible for assuring, right? Quality assurance, for assuring that we're doing things in the right way. So quality is everyone's responsibility. All right, so you see here, We're trying to get a report, evaluation documents. Do you remember, I'm gonna date myself a little bit here. Have you ever seen I Love Lucy?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you remember the episode with the chocolates and the bonbons?
With her friend, and they were like
Uh-huh.
in the assembly line. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. So that's a good example of quality assurance and quality control happening at the same time. Okay, so they're going down the assembly line and the chocolates are going and they're putting the chocolates in. It's kind of like a picker. But every once in a while, chocolate's not good. It was too big or too small or something like that. And they take it out. That's quality control. This deliverable did not meet its requirements. It was too large or too small. All right. And so she would eat it. Bad chocolate, she'd eat it. Quality control. Okay. Now, you remember the lady, the boss that comes out and she's standing in a lab coat and she has the clipboard and she's making her notes?
Mhm.
That will be quality assurance. That's sort of like, Lucy, are you checking every 6th chocolate or are you checking every 5th chocolate? Are you moving the bad chocolates into a pile on your right or are you moving them to a pile on the left all over the place? And so sometimes those bad chocolates are getting back into the pile, right? Or maybe we're getting these bad chocolates, that's quality control. Then quality assurance would say, maybe we ought to slow the conveyor belt down so the chocolate spends more time underneath the heat conveyor. I don't know. Or maybe we ought to change the formula, or maybe we ought to turn the heat up, keep the conveyor belt at the same speed, but turn the heat up. You know, who knows? But that's kind of the idea of quality assurance. It's checking the process to make sure that if the process is good, then the end product will be just fine. And the product will then be tested as quality control. But right
Mhm.
now we're focusing on the process. All right, so test and evaluation documents and quality reports create the method by which project quality is assessed. So by the way, quality assurance is almost like an internal audit, right? It's you on the team taking a look at the team and saying, hey guys, we're not doing this in the right order. You guys have been submitting, these activities as complete, but the definition of done says that, you are supposed to either test or you're supposed to, do some sort of connection. That's not done. Can you please, make sure you do your work in the right order? That's auditing how the team is doing work. And that's really what this process is it's sort of an internal audit. Now, there's something called a quality audit for PMI. So if someone from outside the team, I'm going to make a note there, a quality audit is someone from outside the team. They don't have to be from outside the company, but just someone from outside the team is coming in to check on the team. That is a quality audit. But if someone internally from the team is checking on the team's processes, then that's just quality assurance. So that's the difference for PMI. They're the exact same thing, but if somebody from outside my project team, it does not have to be outside the company, just as long as they're not a part of my team, all right, they come and they audit me, then that's a quality audit. But if someone from within the team is doing the audits, that's called quality assurance.
Okay.
So key inputs, you see here the plans, the documents, you need to know the metrics especially. We need to know, what it is are we counting and how many should we get? And then we use these tools and techniques. So data gathering, go out and use checklists to make sure that people are doing the right steps. This would be the person at McDonald's, checking in on one of their franchisees saying, listen in to say, are you telling everybody, welcome to McDonald's, may I take your order? They'd be sitting and look, did you put 2 packets of ketchup in? Not 3, not 1. Did you put 2 napkins in? Not 3, not 1, right? That's the data gathering on this case. And then we would analyze that data. So let me give you a different example. You've been to Krispy Kreme?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you know how you go and you see the donuts come and they come out and then they get on the conveyor belt and they go through, they sit on the heat exchange and then they rise and we watch them rise. And then as they rise, they go through and then they keep going on the train. As they cool down a little bit, then they come through this waterfall of icing. And then when they get to the waterfall of icing, they keep going on the conveyor belt and they get to the guy that's there, the pickers, what they call them, just like we were talking about with Lucy. And he's a good donut, oh, bad donut. good donut, good donut, good donut, oh, bad donut, right? Now, if the donuts are bad, that's quality control. That's what he's doing. That person is doing quality control because that's the deliverable are the donuts. Some of the donuts maybe didn't rise enough. Maybe some of the donuts didn't get fully glazed. Whatever reason, bad donut goes over there. That's quality control, right? So now let's say we're getting donuts that aren't rising. They're not doing their job, right? Something's happening with the mixture. So we're gathering data and we're noticing that, wow, for every 10 donuts, we're getting 3 wrong. That's a 30% defect rate. What's really going on here? And we're looking at this. So the first thing we do is we look at the process. What's the process? Is the process good? Is everybody following the plan? Do we have any rogue actors out there that are doing something? Because sometimes you have rogue actors that do their thing and it actually gives you a quality product, but then everybody else is to have a not quality product and then we can't figure it out. So is everybody doing the same thing? Are we all on the same page? Great. Now let's analyze the process. Let's go and look. Maybe the donuts ought to spend more time underneath the heat exchange. Therefore, we slow the conveyor belt down. But maybe we just turn the heat up. That way we don't have to slow anything down. We keep the speed the same. Maybe it's not the speed or the heat. Maybe it's our formula. Maybe we need more milk, less sugar, more eggs, less flour. Who knows, right? But that's the idea of using quality assurance to satisfy quality control, right? Quality control is the deliverable. That end product's not right. Why is it not right? Let's go make a change to our process. And that way we can assure that our product will be controlled. So that's the idea of quality assurance being the process. And that's where we do this analysis here. We look for alternatives in the process, or we try to go find root cause. What are all the reasons why the donut wouldn't have rose? Oh, maybe it didn't get hot enough. Maybe the formula's bad, maybe, right? And so we'll use that to go do root cause analysis. And we'll represent that data using some charts or diagrams or flow charts, histograms. I showed you a cause and effect diagram yesterday. That's also the same thing as a fishbone or an Ishikawa diagram. Mm-hmm. You're familiar with flow charts. Are you familiar with the histogram? They're just bar charts.
Yeah, like just a bar chart.
Yep, it's just a series of bar charts. This would be a histogram right here. If you remember that when I showed you leveling and smoothing, that was a resource histogram, right? You had one resource histogram that we had the level line, and then you had the other one we tried to smooth out the peaks and valleys. That's a resource histogram. Matrix diagrams are also, don't overthink those. A matrix is literally just, almost like an Excel spreadsheet where you have, criteria. A RACI chart would be a sort of type of matrix diagram. Are you familiar with the RACI? I think we talked about that, right?
Yeah. Responsibility.
Right. And then scatter diagrams. Have you used those before?
I don't know.
Here's what a scatter diagram look like. Here, let me draw a couple. 2, and then 3. So we'll draw 3 scatter diagrams. And then we'll say your level of knowledge with PMI, right? Your level of PMI knowledge at the top. And then at the bottom, we'll say your years as a PM, your age, or your, days in a boot camp. Number of days in a boot camp. If I can draw that. Okay, can't, but you get it. All right, so we'll say, okay, is there a correlation between how old you are and how much knowledge you have in project management? Is it true that as you get older, you'll have more knowledge? And we'll find that nope, it's all over the map. We have some people who are, they're older and they have some knowledge, but we have some people who are older and they don't have that much knowledge. And then we have some people who are younger and they have a lot of knowledge, right? But then we have some people who are younger and they don't have much knowledge. And they'll say that's years as a PM, right? Same thing with age. All right, they'll say, well, your age or years as a PM, as you get older, as you have more years in practicing, do you learn more knowledge about PMI? And we'll find out, nope, no correlation. But then we'll say, okay, well, what about the number of days you're in the boot camp? As you increase the number of days in the boot camp, does your knowledge of PMI increase? And then we'll see like a little type pattern there, and we'll say, yep. Those who have a short amount of days don't have much knowledge, but those who have many days in a boot camp they end up with a lot of knowledge there. Right. So that's what a scatter diagram can do for you. It can tell you if there's a correlation between two variables.
I see.
All right, so let me clear that. Okay. Now here goes the audits. The audits is what I was talking about, a structured process observations. These observations are independent. It is a structured, independent review. Okay. So independent meaning it is outside the project team. So that's the key term that you'll see on the exam. Structured and independent. Structured and independent. And then you know it's outside the team, right? So it must be a quality audit. But if it's not independent, even if it's structured, someone from within the team is doing it, that's quality assurance, right? So structured and independent, it's like, we don't care about your EEFs and everybody goes to happy hour on Thursday at 4:30. I'm going to be there at 4:45. Somebody better be here or you'll fail your audit. Again, structured and independent. I don't care about your OPAs. I don't need any of your documents. Give me what I need. Stay out of my way. Right? If you've ever been audited, that is how most of the time, like, you know, the auditors sort of treat you because they need to be impartial. They don't need you in their ear, feeding you information and trying to sway bias into their minds. So like, oh, nope, I do my own thing. I got everything I need. Just provide me the stuff I need and please stand back. All right. So if it's independent, quality audit. If it's not, quality assurance.
Okay.
Design for X. Have you heard of this?
I've read it. I haven't gotten there yet, though, to the details.
What you guys do is almost designed for X, right? You have a product that's sort of meant to, you know, solve a problem. It's a solution, but then you have to go and implement it into someone's system. So you've designed it for X. You've designed it to be able to do a particular aspect, optimization of something, right? That's what you guys are doing. You're optimizing, if I remember correctly, the financials, the payments, right? So sort of like, you know, that's what it's designed for. That's the design for X, right? And then problem solving is just a structured approach to limiting issues. That's what problem solving is. That's a definition. Don't overthink that one. Don't overthink that one. Problem solving is what it is. All right. So affinity diagrams. This is the, you know, small, medium, large, extra large type deal. Or, you know, coffee cup sizes, venti. I don't know the other ones. I'm not going to try. The cause and effect, we saw that. All right. Flow charts. You're familiar with that. I explained histogram, the matrix, and I showed you a scatter diagram. Any questions on any of these?
No.
Okay. Here's a pretty little fishbone or Ishikawa fishbone or cause and effect diagram. PMI will use all four terms, so don't forget that. All right. Audit, structured observation. Already talked about this one. And then design for X. Technical guidelines used to optimize a specific aspect of a product design. Please optimize this product for my environment. Right. And then there's an approach for problem solving, but you do not need to memorize that for the exam. They don't ask you the steps or anything like that. So now let's get to resource management. Now we're at resource management. All right. So in this case, we want to acquire the team, develop the team, manage the team. So I want to make a note here that when we acquire the team, this is where we negotiate. You may not remember because, you know, it's early on and I don't expect you to remember anyways. But when we were planning resource management, networking was a tool and a technique. Networking meaning, hey, I got a project coming up in Q1 of 2021, and I think I'm going to need 2 of your department employees, 40% FTE. Is it possible? Are they working on stuff? I mean, can we work this out now? I just want to give you a heads up. That's the networking, right? When it's time to actually acquire resources, there's no more networking. It's negotiation. It goes, hey, Karin, we spoke in October of last year, and you promised me that I would be able to get your 2 people, 40% FTE. I'm ready to do that now. Can we formally get them? I want to onboard them. I did put that chocolate bar on your desk, right? So that's kind of the idea of the negotiation, right?
Mhm.
It's at this point, we're not networking anymore. It's down to the wire, because if you're not doing it internally, then you're negotiating externally with some firm for, you're trying to get their hourly rate down. You're trying to get the best person at that hourly rate. When we develop the team, this is when you are working with the entire team, right? It's team focused. Whereas when you manage the team, this is when you're working with individuals. It is individual focused. I wish PMI would call it manage individual team members, but they don't. And a million people have gotten a PMP before you, so why not you? So you will remember that when we develop the team, we're working with groups of people, at least two. And when we manage a team, we're only working with an individual, one at a time. We're solving their problems or one-on-one. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's acquire resources. Let's go out and get, and this isn't just people, right? I know that I put negotiation here. We don't just negotiate people, we negotiate materials, machines, supplies as well. So when we acquire resources, this is about us using the money that's been approved within a time that's been allotted to go out and get the required resources so that we can produce those deliverables. All right, that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Right. So we're going to look at, who's going to be doing what, right? The process delivers resource assignments and calendars. That's what this acquire resources does, right? Because depending on if you get a senior person or a junior person, internal or external, that's going to drive how you meet with people, how you set up the work, if you need to train, the timing, all of those things. Right now, depending on the structure of your environment, you may have direct or indirect control of team members. Typically you have so I'm assuming you have indirect control. Your team members, none of them report to you, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly.
That's
Yeah,
true.
you are managing in like what's considered to be the most difficult aspect of project management. So this is really, really good though, Karen, because I mean, everything else is easier. And as you get up in your career, you'll be recognized for this, right? So that's the idea of what you're doing now is you're leading without power. And so therefore, you have indirect control of those folks. And so here we go. This is the first of the 3 resources in executing process group. So we're going to make sure we have adequate resources. Then we develop the team. So we're going to improve the competence of the entire team. And then right here, this is where we're delivering feedback and resolving issues with individuals. All right. Manage a team is with individuals. Okay. So we want to get the physical resource assignments as well as the people assignments, as well as when those materials will be shipped to us, when those machines will be available to us, when those other tools we can rent, when those people will come from other departments, when those people will come from outside the organization. We want to get those calendars. So those are the 3 specific outputs to this process. And yes, you may potentially get requests for change. You may update your approach based on the types of resources that you're able to successfully get. You're going to update some documents. You may update the EEFs and OPAs. Oh, look at that. EEF updates.
Hmm.
EEFs out of the control of the PM. Why do you suppose we get EEF updates here?
Mm. What's an example of an EEF here?
So almost everything. So I shouldn't say that. Let me be specific here. We get EEF updates when we acquire resources because, if you have a laptop and that's all you have, then the environment will be that when we are doing this is that you have the screen in front of you on your lap or somewhere close to you. If you want to make notes, you have to have a screen here, maybe a little sticky note or somewhere else, right? Then I say, Karen, you're my employee. I want you to have good ergonomics. I'm going to give you some screens and a docking station. So now you dock and now you have a screen. And now instead of the camera being all up in your nose, now the camera is away from you and we see it. The environment has just been updated. You are more comfortable. You have 2 screens to work with. You can do more. Just by simply acquiring a new resource will update your environment. Now, everything could be the same, all tools, all supplies, but we bring in a new person. Just bringing in a new person. That person could have a, real outgoing, gregarious, big personality, and right, that updates the environment. Or that person could be kind of like they're just always upset. They just look fast, look upset. They have the RBS.
Yeah,
that term,
RBF,
right?
yeah.
Like, what's wrong with that person? Everybody's like, what's wrong with that guy, right? So anytime any new resources, people, machines, material, supplies, let's say that as a group, we're used to meeting, virtually, and then boom, this conference room opens up and we book it for like every day at this time, for a month. Now our environment's updated because we're now meeting in person and we're co-located versus when we were doing it virtually. So anytime you acquire resources, you update the environment. And same way when you develop the team, we'll look at the next one, we train people. So now imagine that when you go back to your organization every day, the environment gets updated, right? Tomorrow, when you go back, the environment's going to get updated, but they don't even know it. Why? Because Karen would have been 3 more hours with CJ. She would have learned a few more things. And now the next time she approaches somebody, one of those things that she likes, that she put in her back pocket, that was like, oh, I'm going to use it, she's going to use it. And now it's going to make the project better. And that is going to update the environment. People are going to be more happy, or they're going to get something done quicker, or they're going to be less upset, or they're going to feel good about their success. That is going to update the environment, right? So now imagine all of your other PMs, your fellow PMs, get their PMP credential. Now all of you will speak a similar language, you will use a similar tool set, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you work with individuals, same thing. You either work with someone who was feeling down and blue, maybe they had some issues in their home life, and you were able to talk to them. And then, they're like, oh, you know what? Thank you. I just need to get that off my chest. I would have never said anything, but I'm so glad we had coffee or whatever. And now that they feel better, the environment's updated. Now that you've trained them, the environment's updated. Now that you've fired them, the environment's updated, right? So anytime resources come on and go off the project, the environment gets updated. Does that make sense?
I see now. Yeah.
So as we obtain both the resources in detailing the exact time periods when they're available, then we get the resource calendars, because that's when they're available, and then the team and the physical resources. All right, so we know what we got. Like, okay, good. We put folks in a team directory, have an org chart, something like that. We'll have their names, maybe give them the little C for contractor, et cetera, right? And then we have the calendars that tells us when stuff are there. Oh man, my sister needs to stop. So Karen, I'm a huge Dodger fan. And the World Series is on right now, right? And they're gonna win it. And they haven't won since '87. And I'm like, but it's okay. I'm gonna watch the replay.
Oh my gosh, why are you here? Sorry.
Because baseball will live on forever. I only have so many years on this earth, and I have to make sure that I use it to the best of my ability and help as many PMs as possible, so I can go watch the replay. No worries.
Wow, so many people that I know are going to be so mad though, as Giants
that
fans.
The Dodgers win?
Yeah, Giants fans, right? They're like, aren't they rivals?
I'm going to be so happy. I'm going to be a Dodger for Halloween. Sorry, I'm going to start over here. Okay.
So wait, you're not mad at the spoilers?
What do you mean at the spoilers? Oh,
like,
no.
Don't you want to be surprised when you watch the game?
No, I want to act, I already look, just knowing that they're winning right now. I'm like, I can't even control my smile now. Like, I'm already, look, the environment is updated. So it's just sort of like, I'm okay with that. I can feel good about watching it, know that they win. And, also, I guess I'm used to it now. So when my wife with me, I had a TV in every room, including my kitchen, my garage, like sports all the time. I couldn't miss it. I got to go from one room to the next. Can't miss a beat. But she's a librarian, and it's all about reading, and there's no screen time for the kids. So we have one TV here. We don't even have cable. We do have Netflix. So I just use like my sister's login for her cable, and I cheat. But that's my life now. So I've learned to go without it.
Wow, that's a big shift.
Huge shift. I don't even feel like I get any more done. You know, you feel like, oh my God, I don't even watch as much TV anymore, but it's not like I get anything else. But oh well, I'm doing this. See, no, that's a lie. That's a lie. You listen, I can go watch that game anytime, but then if I don't go watch the game, then you're not going to get this tonight. Right. So this is actually more important than the game, man. Those guys, you know, they should be paying us the way those guys make money, right? The work that we do with our teams.
Well,
Remember
I
this.
really appreciate your time right now.
You didn't appreciate it last week?
No, same, but just knowing how big of a fan you are.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I am happy though, so it's okay. All right. Yeah, because you just texted one more inning, so I knew what that meant. I know it means that we're up. You know, the closers in, the big guns. All right. So internal resources are acquired from functional managers. Remember that whole the matrix organizations where we have the functional organization, the weak, balanced, strong, and then the projectized.
Mhm.
And you know what? I didn't even give you the pros and cons. So I got to make sure I do that. I don't remember giving you the pros and cons when I was explaining that last time. I'm going to tell them you now, but I'm going to go back, and so we can go back to those slides at the end.
Okay.
Pros and cons of org types. So just real quickly, in a functional organization, the bad thing about it is that you don't have the full skill set to be a PM. If you remember that, like sort of example was like, I'm just the department supervisor of outdoor garden, and now I've got to run this project. But when I'm done, I go back to being the outdoor garden supervisor, right? So I'm not really a PM. And then the good thing about that is I have a job to return to when the project is done. And then on the flip side, for projectized organizations, the bad thing about it is that I either have team members on the bench or I have to release workers. So like, you know, thinking construction, when we're done building the building, it's like, thank you, local union 85 electrical workers, and thank you, local union 65 plumbers. I hope you guys have a good sales team and you find other work because we no longer need you. Right? Or we have the best architect in the world and we're not building any buildings right now, but we're just sending him or her to training and we're still paying them a salary because we don't want to lose them. So those are the negative things, that you either have team members on the bench or you have to release workers. The good thing about being in that type of environment is that you have a total level of authority. So you can make changes, you can spend money, you can do what you need to do to make sure the project is successful and you're not hampered or bottlenecked by, you know, some process or others above. And then in a matrix organization, the good thing about that is having that shared resource pool. So if you remember, I gave you the example of like, well, I could just be the district manager and then I could just go get somebody from outside garden at all 5 stores. And then we go to each store and we do our thing rather than taking somebody from lumber and hardware and paint and bringing them out. All right. So the shared resource pool. But the bad thing about being in a matrix environment is the conflict with functional managers. Okay. The conflict with functional managers. And so that's what we see here. Is that internal resources are acquired from functional managers, but they typically get upset because they're like, well, hey, you guys are always wondering why we can't meet our numbers, but you're always picking our best people for your projects. And that's why we can't meet our numbers, right? So there's always this conflict with you know, PMs and functional managers. I don't know if you've experienced that yet in your career. They don't want to give you, you know, the best person, or they're like, well, you know, he's taking my people. Have you ever experienced that? Probably not at a startup. Everybody wears a lot of hats and they're ready to chip in. But the larger the organization, the more divisions of work happen. And so the more people are like, that's not in my job description. Okay. Outputs, change request, updates to our approach, AKA project management plan, or updates to our documents, right? So we could get change requests from acquiring resources. We could acquire some resource that, you know, we just now got a huge screen. So now we need a projector. Change request, please increase the budget for a projector, right? That could happen, right? We could update our approach. We could update our documents. And then we need to schedule the cost baseline, the management plans, right? We need to know on what is obtained and the how. Here's the how. All right. So we need those, resource requirements or the resource breakdown structure. We would use that internally here. We would use the project schedule, not the one that we get signed off on by management. Like when we get our project management plan signed off and there's a schedule that gets signed off on that. What is that one called?
Schedule baseline. Wait.
Beautiful. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly what it is. So remember, they're two separate things. Schedule's that real detailed one that we use. The baseline's what we give management or what we get signed off on. All right. And then obviously there's a different process for getting folks internally than there would be for getting folks externally. Okay. What's happening? There we go. Then the unique EEFs to your environment. You think about that when you're acquiring resources, are folks, distributed or, what type of organization are we in? And then OPAs as well. And then we use tools and techniques like multi-criteria decision analysis. It's kind of like how we hire people. Can you be available in 2 weeks? Do you live locally? How much money do you want? How long have you been doing this? Where'd you go to school? And then based on all that, we'll pick somebody. That's our multiple criteria here. We'll make some decision. And then if you remember multi-criteria decision analysis, that was a tool and a technique. The analysis then says, go back and double check you picked the right person. Interview them. After you interview them, go back and do a screen, do a drug screen, do a criminal screen, do a background check, something like that, right? So that's how we use, multi-criteria decision tools to acquire resources. And that doesn't have to be for people. That could same thing could be for looking at companies for the products that they want to use. And then we can pre-assign people. That is a tool and a technique of acquiring resources. I know that sounds weird. Same thing with virtual teams, but PMI says that, a tool and a technique is to just go and make sure that they've been allocated to your efforts in advance, right? So that's pre-assignment. And then a virtual team is, again, that sounds weird. It's like, well, just because they're not there, but, virtual could mean we're just on different floors, right? Virtual means that you are not in the same room, right? So even though it says allows team members to be spread in different geographic locations, well, you said you worked at Facebook, so you know their campus, right? Mm-hmm. Google's campus. I mean, you need bikes and golf carts, to go around those places, right? So that's the idea there. And that's it. Any questions on acquiring the team or acquiring resources?
No.
Okay. So now that we've acquired all of our resources, which included the people from the machines, materials, and supplies, now we're going to go and develop the people. We developed products. We bought products that already be developed for our need, but the people, we still got to develop them. All right. So we're focused on transforming those people just from individual team members into a team, right? This is sort of like, okay, basketball fan a little bit, Warriors. Okay.
Kind of.
Yeah, but okay. But I mean, they were winning. So it's like, it was kind of in everybody's face, right?
Yeah.
So the last year, we can say that Golden State was a team when they won the first year, when they lost the second year. When they won the third and the fourth year, they were a team. In the fifth year, last year or the year before, when Kevin Durant, was hurt, that is when they were no longer a team. They were just a bunch of individuals on a team. So I don't know if you followed them closely enough to recognize that. No, maybe not. Any sports you follow?
I know a little bit about the situation.
Okay, so I guess that makes sense to you.
He got hurt and Clay got hurt and everything just started falling apart.
Okay, no, I'm talking before that. So early in the season, like maybe the fourth or the fifth game, because Kevin Durant was going to be a free agent at the end of the season, and he hadn't signed yet with the team, and there was a point where Draymond was bringing up the ball in the middle of the court, and you know the two wings. You have Clay coming down, and then you had Kevin Durant coming on the other side, and Kevin Durant was clapping for the ball, like, give me the ball. And then Draymond didn't give it to him, and then he was mad. And then Draymond made a comment, and it was on camera, and so it was a big issue for the team. And he was just like, man, F you, you're a B. You ain't even about to be here next year. You halfway checked out. Shut the F up. And it got caught on camera, and then everybody had to talk about it. And you could see that, like, when he said that when Draymond said that to Kevin Durant, you could see where, like, it kind of caught him off guard and, like, made him feel like, dang, like, right? Because imagine that, like, you're supposed to be the best player, and we don't even know if he's coming back next year. So bump you. We won before you. We'll win without you. That's how Draymond was feeling. And that's really what hurt their season in the end. So that's the idea that I'm talking about here. When we develop the team, it's all about making sure that we go from just individuals into a high performing collaborative team. That's what we got to do. All right. So we look at training, recognizing, rewarding people. And then we'll have a team performance assessment, right? And that assists us in the next process, manage team, because we need to know how the team is doing when it's time for us to gauge individual performance. So here's the output: team performance assessments. We get change requests, updates to the approach and documents, EDFs and OPAs as outputs. Again, anytime we do anything with our resources, we end up updating the environment. Let's look at these tools and techniques as used on these inputs. So the team performance assessment, this is how we track the team development. You know, and we have sort of the Tuckman ladder. So will we talk about the Tuckman ladder? Oh yeah, it should be when we get into to tools and techniques. So trying to get this team performance assessment that says how the team is doing. And this is everything: how they're doing on the project, how are they doing with training, you know, how are they doing individually? Not when I say individual, I mean, how are they working together as a cohesive unit? Are they not? Are they, you know, bickering? Right. So we need a team performance assessment for that. This is not a standard document that companies use. Right. I'm going to assume that you don't have anything like this.
Not a document.
Yeah. You know, just, you know, even the large, you know, large companies don't tend to keep this. And if there is a performance assessment, it's based on individuals and their managers, and that individual reviews that file, and then it's right. HR.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not a common thing. So just keep that in the back of your mind for the exam. This is, you know, we're building a rocket ship. And so that's why we have to have team performance assessments. We could potentially get change requests or update our approach and documents. Now, the plan and the document set the baseline, right? So we bring those as inputs as well, because it's sort of like, well, this is how the team needs to be able to complete these deliverables in this set of time. And here's how we intended to do everything. And so we have to make sure the team sort of matches that. We get a team charter. This was an output in plan resource management. In plan resource management, we got a team charter that said, you know, sort of the rules of engagement. If you remember that, I was saying, like, it would have stuff like, you know, if I text you, you know, I should get a response in so many hours. If I call you, if I email you, here's how we're going to respect each other's ideas and not put anybody down. So we take that as an input now as well, as we start to develop the team, to say, hey guys, here's what we agreed upon, or here's my thought coming in to manage the team. You know, what do you guys think? What do you want to do? Let them own it. Now that they own it, okay, here's our charters team. This is what we need to do. All right, we got to take who's been assigned and when they're available, and then when work is happening, so we can know when it's appropriate to provide the training. Now, as a PM, you have to design the work environment. And when we say design the work environment, this could just literally be, this could be like Confluence. How you set Confluence up with, you know, it could be as intricate as having a page that has everybody's pictures on it, so that that's sort of the landing page and we see the team. You could have another page that has like everybody's vacations on it, so that we know when somebody's going to be out. So even if you're, you know, dispersed throughout the globe, you can still design a work environment that makes sure that, like, you know, it's transparent. We all know what's going on. You know, we can collaborate better, you know, so that's the idea. There's different work environments that you do that in, whether you're co-located, So co-located means that you need to be in the same room. All right. This word location can be vague. You got to be in the same room. If we're in the same location, but you're on the 3rd floor and I'm on the 5th, or you're on the 1st floor, I'm on the 2nd, we are not in the same location. So remember that for PMI. Or if you're on the 2nd floor, I'm on the 2nd floor, but you're on the east wing and I'm on the west wing, we are not in the same location. Okay. So co-location means that we, actually, yeah, here's a good term for you. Earshot. Someone needs to be in earshot. That means they're co-located. I got to be able to say, Karen, what about that thing? And then, you got to be, hey, quit yelling. All right. So if you're not in earshot, you're not co-located. You know what virtual teams are? All right. We talked about technology as the driver. This is the channels for healthy team dialogue. So, this would be in your Confluence, and then this would be Slack, and then maybe you have another Slack channel that, is for like funny stuff. And then, Slack channel for your project. And within that, go so on and so forth. So that's what we use technology to do. It's the driver, it's the vehicles. We have meetings with people to develop the team during brown bags, etc. We recognize and reward. Note from PMI. PMI says that you should recognize groups over people because we are incredibly envious as human beings. So like, why does he get that? I'm doing all this, or why does she get that? She doesn't do any of that. So it's better when you say, hey, this team, you guys did a great job, clap it up. And we want teams to do better, not individuals. We don't want individual heroics. We want team, consistent team success. So now let's talk about conflict management, influencing, motivating, negotiating, team building skills. All of these are used here. Let's talk about what some of those look like. So here's the Tuckman ladder. You need to memorize this for the exam. The stages: forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. Have you heard of this before?
Just in my reading.
Okay. Note that anytime a new team member joins, you go back to forming. So let's say CJ and Karen have been working together for 20 years, and our entire department, right, has been working there at least 10 years. Some of us up to 20, but at least 10. The youngest person, so to speak, in terms of time, has been there 10 years. We know each other's families. We get together the weekends. We all know each other personally. Okay. Now, you are working on a project with 5 other people, and I'm going to join you in 3 weeks. Just because we've already been a team and we've worked on many projects before, we could have worked on 100 projects together already. We still go back to forming because now the work of 4 people needs to be divided into 5 people. If just for that, we go back to forming. All right. But now my personality brings something different, right? I could set somebody off positively or negatively, or I could connect with somebody, which then minimizes the amount of connection time they would have with another person, which then would make that person's performance go down. There's just so many variables. So the second that you introduce a new team member, don't let PMI trip you up on this. It does not matter how long you've been working together. As soon as you introduce a new team member, you go back to forming. Deal? Okay. So forming is usually when everybody gets to the project. They're like, oh, yes, this is great. I'm going to enjoy working on you. This is a good initiative, right? You got to know this for the exam. So I'm going to describe it. So everybody, it's the happy time. Forming and adjourning, that's the happiest time. Project's over, yes, right? But usually when we form, this is great. We're going to do this. And then the storming happens. Why are we using this? Or no, we should be doing it that way. That approach sucks. No. Then the norming happens. And you know who the negative Nellies are, who the eternal optimists are, who's going to be late all the time, who's always going to be early, Johnny on the spot, whose work is going to be really good and crisp, and whose work is going to be like, did you just do this last night? Right? That's norming. And then the performing happens when we're sort of cross-trained and we know what's happening. And let's say there's 10 of us as a team and 4 people are out. And we can still operate at 75% with 60% of our workforce. That's when we know we're performing. Right? We work well together as a unit. We can work through issues. We can figure it out. We can all do this. We can pick up some weight. And then adjourning, the team completes the work and they move on. So, in a lot of software development companies, we don't disband the team. We try to keep the same teams together. But in waterfall projects, team disbands, you move on. Any questions? You got to know this. They're gonna either describe it and ask you which one you're in, or they'll describe it and say what comes before or what comes after. So you need to know this one in your head. Just like you need to know the projectized, the three matrices, and the functional organizations, and how they fit with the different, with the PM's level of authority with respects to the budget and the resources and et cetera, et cetera. You got to see this in your head.
Okay.
Just like you got to see the cost of quality, all right? Cost of conformance, non-conformance, cost of conformance, preventative and appraisal, cost of non-conformance, internal and external failures.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay. Individual and team assessments. It's just another tool and a technique. It's just a way for us to identify when we can enhance somebody's skill levels. So, we want to be able to turn weaknesses into strengths, and we want to be able to turn strengths into diamonds, right? And really do well with it. So that's the idea. It can be initiated by the PM, but it doesn't have to be necessarily initiated. You could just go to the people and say, hey, what do you guys want to do? And that is initiating it in itself. All right. And then training can obviously be delivered in multiple formats, formal, informal, classroom, online, right? This is our very informal online training. It's supposed to be a very formal, I'm supposed to go very, technical with the slides, and that's just so boring. That's so boring. So we make it informal. We have fun with it. All right. So it just depends on what you want, tools and techniques. There's no wrong way, PMI says. And now here's our next case study. Oh, my mom just called me, so that means they won.
Okay. And congratulations. It looks like.
Thank you. I'm watching these highlights right now. Like, yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
It's been like a decade, right?
Man, since 87.
Oh, wow.
87 when Kurt Gibson did the whole, like, you seen that commercial and he's like doing this thing and they beat the A's in 87. And my sister was born that year. So
Oh
that's
my
how long
gosh.
how long it's
Wow.
been. My grandfather's diehard Dodger fan, Roy Campanella, way back in the day, Sandy Koufax. And then I grew up in Pasadena playing at Jackie Robinson Park and going to Dodger. So I mean, I bleed Dodger blue. It's ingrained in me.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Okay.
If you're a Laker fan, then it's your year for sports.
Well, I am not a Laker. So I bleed Dodger blue and it ends there. I'm a basketball fan and I'm a football fan. I don't really have a team in any of those, right? But my mom is a diehard Laker fan. My brother's name is Kareem. So, for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I mean, yeah, this is a happy time for LA, right? Let's see what the
Nice.
Rams can do this year. All right, what's the correct order of the Tuckman ladder?
B.
Okay. John utilized which strategy to improve the communication and performance of the team members located at the home office?
D.
And then
Oh,
in terms
sorry.
of the Tuckman ladder, okay.
B.
And then in terms of the Tuckman ladder, John's team is most likely transitioning from which stage to which?
C. And can I go back to the second question and choose D, please?
No. Yes, you can.
I can do that on the test, right? Like if I select an answer, I can go back and change it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's no like it's not scored until either the exam ends or you hit end. Even when you hit end the exam, then the thing will pop up. Do you want to enter your exam? And you'll hit yes. And then another thing will pop up that says, are you sure? Like as a fail safe. So you literally have to 3 times. End it. Do you want to end it? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. That way nobody mistakenly hits it. So
okay.
Hopefully that should give you a little bit of ease your mind a little bit too. Okay, let's see how we did. B, D, C. Oh, we got some more. Acknowledging and thanking Hunter and Justine for the positive work they performed while completing the control quality process was an example of what type of tool and technique commonly used during the develop team process.
B.
And analyzing the effectiveness of co-location and the use of team building and negotiation skills. Well, by analyzing effectiveness, right? What type of assessment did John produce as an output of the develop team process?
D.
Okay, so we have B, D, C, B, D. Let's see. B, so this was D, right? I think you chose C the first time. No, you did. BDC. I'm wrong.
Yeah, I changed it.
The first one. BDC. Oh, you did change it?
Oh, no. The third one I got wrong.
Oh, yeah. The third one you did get wrong. So you put norming to performing. And you know why? Because it says they were starting to like develop good habits. Just because we're developing good habits don't mean that we're performing well. Like if we're just now developing good habits, then we've got a lot to do.
Oh, I see. It was the weird vibe at first, and then it got better. Then it improved.
Right. That weird vibe was a storm.
Okay.
Right. Because remember when we form, there's usually no weird vibes. Everybody's happy. Like, oh, this is cool. All right, I'm doing this project. Okay. And then the storming happens like in the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then, and probably for a project like yours, your storming probably happens quickly. You guys form and like within a couple days, right? You're going through like the strategy for implementation. The storming happens.
Yeah.
And then the norming probably happens by the end of the week.
Yeah.
You kind of like have, okay, we know what we're doing. And then by the following week, and if you're norming, and probably 2 weeks in, which is usually halfway through, then you kind of get to the performing. Like, all right, we're well oiled. We know what we need to do. You know, even if we miss a day here or there, somebody could probably pick it up or just work on the weekend and you know, and pick that piece up. So that's kind of the idea, is like when you get to performing, the exam needs to tell you something to the extent that you can still do more with less, right? Some variation of that. And then you got recognition rewards, right? And then team performance assessment. Okay. Now we're going to manage the team. And we're going to manage the team. So this is for individuals. All right. So it's all about the PM actively leading the team, helping them evaluate performance, navigate conflicts, make adjustments. This is about us working with people. This is bigger than the project. This is about, how are you doing today? How was the work? Are you okay? You okay at home? Is there anything we can help you with? Right. So it's more than just the project, but it's about making sure that we deal with individuals. So these are, here is, okay, we saw risk owners as the first time that the project manager is not responsible, right? Anytime you see who is responsible on exam, you can literally stop reading, go down, and if it's the PM, boom, you can pick it, right? The only 3 times that the PM will not be responsible is risk owners. And then here's the second time, all right? Conflict resolution techniques. Now, I know the slides don't explicitly state it, but PMI says that whenever there's conflict, those 2 stakeholders are responsible for resolving the conflict in the first instance. If they cannot resolve the conflict in the first instance, then the PM gets involved to help. Okay, now in the practical application, we don't typically do that. I am not going to allow 2 team members to duke it out, quote unquote, whether verbally or physically or passive aggressively. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to go get involved, and I'm going to do what I got to do to, you know, either smooth things over, get them to compromise. Hopefully they can collaborate. And if not, I'll force the issue, right? So that's usually what we do as PMs. But for the exam, PMI says, back it up. Let those stakeholders do their thing first. And if it doesn't work, then you get involved. And when we think about it, that's true. It's sort of to have healthy relationships, you do have to let people, you know, kind of go through the cycle and run their course. But let me describe these, because PMI is going to go into detail. Again, PMI ask these questions in 2 ways. They will either describe it and say, what should the project manager do? When they say, what should you do? There's only, regardless of what they describe, there's one answer and only one answer. Can you think, now that you know about PMI, sort of, you know, based on NASA and, you know, double check, measure twice, cut once. If they ask you, what should the project manager do? And there's only one right answer, which one of these do you think is going to be the right answer?
Five.
Yep. If they say, what should the project manager do? Regardless of what they're describing, you will pick collaborate, problem solve, because that is what we should always do. We should collaborate and get people to solve problems. But if they say, what is happening? Then you pick. Okay. So if they ask you what you should do, you're always going to pick collaborate, problem solve. But if they say what's happening, then you describe. So withdraw or avoid. So let's imagine we're on the same team, and I'm going to stick with the painting walls scenario. And we've been asked to paint the wall, and Karin is a A's fan, and she wants the wall to be green and yellow. And I'm a Dodger fan. And I want the walls to be blue and white. And so we're arguing. And finally, I'm like, you know what? I don't even care. Dodgers won the World Series. I don't even want to work with you. I'm done. Do whatever you want. Pick whatever color you want. And I leave. Now, when they describe it on exam, because they will describe scenarios like that where 2 people are working together, the other person's like, fine, whatever, do it. Do whatever you want. I don't care. That does not mean that the other person won the argument. Other person didn't lose the argument. It means that one person withdrew or avoided the conflict. They said, you know what? I have no conflict, because you know what? I did not get you to agree to my Dodger blue. You did not get me to agree to your A's green. Therefore, this is considered a lose-lose for PMI. All right. And you want to make a note of that somewhere. This is a lose-lose scenario. Okay. Smooth and accommodate. So your husband walks in and says, Karen, CJ, what's wrong with you guys? Nobody's even watching baseball anymore. It's a dying sport. Let's go have a beer. And so we have a beer and another and another. And let me see if I can guess the kind of beer you drink. A Stella?
I like Stellas, yeah.
Okay. So after 5 or 6 Stellas, we're both happy and we're like, oh man, Stella's a good beer. Okay. That is still a lose-lose situation because tomorrow when I show up to work with a hangover from all them beers, right? And if I see green, I'm going to be pissed. And if you show up and you see the wall's blue, you're going to be pissed too. So it's still a lose-lose situation, right? Lose-lose. Excuse me. This is a lose-win situation. No. Excuse me. It's a lose-lose. I'm sorry. This is still a lose-lose because I have not gotten you to agree to anything and you didn't get me to agree to anything either. Okay.
Or smooth and
Now,
accommodate.
compromise. Yeah, smooth and accommodate. Okay. Both of these are lose-lose.
Okay.
All right. So this is a lose-lose. And the first one's a lose-lose, but I can't really write well on this thing. Then we have compromise, reconcile. You know why? Because I should be using the tip. I should be using this one. Where's my little special pen? There it goes. Okay, then we have compromise, reconcile. And this is the idea that I say, okay, I'll take these 2 walls and you'll take the back 3 walls, right? Because there's a little thing here. Like you'll get 1, 2 in those walls and I'll take these walls, right? Well, PMI doesn't give a designation for this. I still call it a lose-lose because, you gave something up and I gave something up. But again, that's just me. PMI does not call us anything, right? So we have, let me redo this real quick. Okay, so we have the lose-lose here. We have a lose-lose here too. We have nothing on this one. We have force and direct. So force and direct, and maybe your daughter walks in and says, giant green, that's ugly. Dodger blue, that's ugly. I want this nice color like my bear, whatever that color is. And then she says, and if you don't put this color up, I'm never going to go to sleep and I'm going to stay up all night. And then we're both like, no, I need a healthy and happy Karen at work and Karen needs a healthy and happy baby at home. So we are going to put the color on her thing. Now, this is how the exam usually does it. They will usually say something like this, and it'll be something, I'm senior to you. You need to do it my way. Or the exam will use this other phrase, do it my way or I'll never help you again. Okay. That is a win-lose situation. All right. That's a win-lose. Someone has forced their way to win and the other person has lost. Right. If I avoid the conflict, you didn't get me to lose. I just withdrew. If things get smoothed over, none of us lost. They're just smoothed over until they boil over again. If we compromise, reconcile, well, we've reconciled. It's now nobody wants to call it a win or loss, so it's just there. If I force you and direct you into doing it my way, I win, you lose, or vice versa. You win, I lose. Now, maybe we both look at this and we say, well, how are they painting rooms these days? And we look at magazines and articles and we're like, oh, we want to stay away from sharp colors and we need an accent wall. And, okay, you take the accent wall and you take the other walls. And okay, then we've done it together. We've come up with alternatives and we've solved problems together. This is the win-win. This is the only win-win for PMI. Of course, I can't make a W there, right? It's only win-win. So if PMI asks you what you should do, you're always going to pick this guy here, wrong color, this guy here. And then if PMI asks you what's happening, then you'll just pick whatever it is that they're describing.
Got it.
All right. So as we manage individuals, because that's what managed project team is, remember, it's all about individuals. So as we manage individuals, we are looking to get change requests. we are, well, we're not looking to get, but we may potentially get requests for change, updates to our approach, updates to our documents, updates to our EEFs. Because again, maybe one person's like, you know what, I don't think it's right for me to be on this project anymore. Can you just release me? And then you don't replace them. Now the environment's updated because we got to do the work of 40 people with 39. Or that, negative Nelly, super sad person is gone and it's not dragging everybody down. Or that super duper, eternal optimist is not there. And so now there's nobody there to bring the spirits up.
Mhm.
So in managing the team, again, the key issues that arrive in the change log, in the issue log, and let's just notice how we take the issue log as an input here, because that's a disagreement between people. We don't take the change log. There's usually no disagreements about the technical aspects because those are the requirements that we got to meet, and they either failed the test or they didn't, right? So there's no disagreement there. That's very objective, but humans, we disagree all the time. So we take the issue log as an input. All right. Oops, went too far. And it's part of the documents. We take the approach of how we were going to deal with our resources from our resource management plan. Any requests for change, those, updates to the approach, updates to the document, and requests for change, those are all outputs. That's what happens in this process. All right. As an input, we need the work performance report. This work performance report is an output of monitor and control project work. All right, it's an output for monitor and control. So just another example of how we jump back and forth between process groups. So data from direct and manage a team in execution gives us, when we direct and manage a team, we get data as an output. Then we use it when we're monitoring and controlling to then create information. And then that information goes into the process monitor and control. That's an input there. And then the output's a work performance report. We use that as an input here. So that way we can determine how the team is doing compared to the project. We need to know that as well. So that's an input. We need the work performance report. And then we also need the team performance assessment because we can't gauge an individual. All right, the project could be doing well. The team could be doing poorly, but this individual is doing well. So we need to be able to take both sets of data, how the project is going, how the team is doing, including any issues between those stakeholders as inputs. And then we'll manage conflict using those, those tools that we talked about. We'll make decisions, right? We'll influence people. So conflict management is essential. And we'll identify issues and we'll find creative solutions when we want to make decisions. And we got to influence people. We got to persuade them to go our way. We got to persuade them why this is right, why they must do stuff in the best interest of the project and not in their best interest. So I went through this one with you, and now you can see the words on the slides here. So when you retreat, right, it's like we just sort of left, right? And that might cause the issue to worsen because when I come back and see it, I'm just going to be stewing all the time. Or we can emphasize that we both like beer, but the issue of us not liking each other's colors was never addressed. All right. We can search for a solution that often resolves issues temporarily, but it still creates a lose-lose scenario. You can push one viewpoint, do it my way, or I'm never going to help you, and that's the win-lose. And then you see here the win-win when we incorporate multiple viewpoints and get folks to work together. Right, we see that one there. So that's that. Any questions about the resources?
Not right now.
Okay. I realized I didn't do our break, but I think if I remember, you were just fine 3 hours, fine and power through.
Yeah, it's
Or
fine.
do you want a quick break or?
No, I'm okay. Unless you need one, it's fine
Okay.
too.
No. Let's. I think we can finish all of we have 22 minutes. Implement risk response, conduct procurement. Yeah, we maybe conduct procurements a little longer, but I think we can finish all of these today, which would be good because this will put us, slightly ahead of schedule. Again, this is usually where we're done on the 4th hour, like the first half of day 3. So that's what we'll stick with that.
Cool.
All right. So manage communications. This process in versions 1 through 5 was called distribute information. but PMI changed it in version 6 to say managed communications. So that way everything could have managed. The same way they changed quality assurance to manage quality, right? But just note that this was distribute information. And I like the name of that because it accurately describes what this process is doing. We are just sending stuff out. We had a plan for how to do it. We developed a communication matrix that said when we would push, pull, have an interactive form, when it would be verbal or written, when it would be formal or informal. And now we are just following the plan. We're ensuring that people are getting what they need at the right time, at the right level of granularity, in the correct format, at the right cadence. And then we'll use technology, our different methods and our different techniques to provide us a little flexibility. So the outputs communications, and here we see the work performance report. Remember, data became an information, became a report, which ultimately becomes a project communication. Okay, so we take as inputs, we need all of these. We need the plan, all right? We're gonna use our how. We're gonna follow our how, and then we got to take some documents, right? Because we got to report out risk reports to folks. We may use the stakeholder register as an input because we need to know how they're likely to respond in a certain way. The quality report, just like the risk report, we need those as inputs so we can communicate information to folks. Any lessons learned, any issues or changes we want to communicate to stakeholders. And then how is the project doing? Because that can influence if we should have change. That can influence why issues are happening on the project. All right. So we take all these things into account, including EFs and OPAs. And let's look at these tools and techniques. We're not going to look at the methods. We've already seen that. So let's just cover that. Do you remember the 3 methods of communicating?
Interactive, push, and pull.
Mm-hmm. And which one says that? Which one do people self-service? They self-service, they go get it at their own leisure.
Pull.
Which one must be sent to a specific group or
Push.
individual? Push, good, okay. All right, let's take a look at the rest. So we're trying to get our project communications. We're not trying to, we will. The purpose of this process is to send stuff out. So anytime you are sending information out to people, you are distributing information. You are managing communications within the team, right? And so these are the different communications that we may send out to people. And we may send out some documents. So information constantly flows. So the challenge of the team is to gather, evaluate, then distribute that information again in the right format with the right level of granularity, with the proper cadence, all of those things at the right time. So we take work performance reports. This is the summarized information into charts and graphs. It's visual. Then we take some documents. We take the plan, use those as inputs. And then the tools and the techniques, project reporting. Don't overthink that. Collect and distribute information. We use technology, methods, and skills to tailor that, right? For some people, we are going to put the performance review on SharePoint and you go pull it. For other people, we are going to alert them, hey, the latest version is out there, or in this case, on Confluence. Here's your email. Here's the link. We'll push them a message to go pull it. For other people, we will email them the report. We will say, here is a copy of the report. You don't need to go click a link. I'm just sending it to you. And for some people, we may have a very formal show up in person. I'm going to run through the deck. I'm going to print out a copy and give it to you. And then you're going to watch me present it, in front of you, right? So we use our technology, the methods and the skills to tailor based on stakeholder needs. And then again, active listening and being aware of the political environment at your organization, knowing who doesn't like who and who does like who, knowing when you purposely need to put 2 people together that they don't like, or when you should avoid it, right? So all that is part of your tools and technique, including using your PMIS, which for you guys is the awesome stack of Jira, Confluence, and Slack. And so, project reports produced in managed communication are different than work performance reports. Work performance reports are official status reports that you develop based on information that you gleaned from the data that your team members gave you. Okay. Whereas a project report is just saying, yep, here's a report on the project. This is kind of happening, this and that. But the performance says, here's how we are doing compared to the schedule baseline or the cost baseline or the scope baseline.
Okay.
Okay. So now let's get into risk management. Let's now go ahead and implement our risk responses. So that's what we want to do here. We want to minimize our exposure. We want to maximize opportunities. This is positive risk, right? And output here is we may get some requests for change, right? Change what we're doing to avoid a risk or change what we're doing to exploit an opportunity. Add more activities to mitigate a threat or add more activities to enhance an opportunity. Transfer to a third party, right? To transfer risk or bring in a third party to share in an opportunity. That's kind of what we're doing. One or the other, see threats or opportunities, and we want to minimize the exposure to threats and maximize our opportunities. So let's implement risk responses. And we see here, this is where the stuff that we did when we planned risk, remember ATM, avoid, transfer, mitigate, see the money, share, enhance, exploit. All right, so we're going to use that. And vigilant focus is required for proper implementation of risk responses, meaning that we need to be constantly watching out for the environment and what's happening and seeing when those risks actually become issues. When do they need responses? So we got to take action. The process is completed throughout the entire project, and the risk mitigation strategies implemented will be monitored when we get to monitor risk. And here we go again. We talked about the risk owner. The risk owners are responsible for implementing a risk response if that risk event takes place, not the PM. All right, so we're going to get either change requests or updates to our documents because there's not a lot that we're doing here. We're just following the plan. If you've noticed that so far, right? We direct and manage the team, following the plan. Manage the knowledge based on us following the plan. Go and do quality assurance based on our quality plan. Go and acquire resources, develop the team, manage individuals based on the plan. Send out information based on the plan. Now implement responses based on the plan. And therefore, the outputs are similar. That's why you notice, if you haven't noticed so far, take note that so far, the majority of our outputs have just been change requests, updates to our documents, or updates to our approach, right? With the, say, for the fact that we get, deliverables and data from direct and manage a team, or, we get a lessons learned register. We may get a quality report. We may get the actual resources, a team performance assessment, a project performance review for individuals. We'll get project communications. Those are the specific outputs we've seen so far, but all of them also included potential requests for change, potential updates to the documents, potential updates to the plan. And this one is no different, except it has no individual outputs, right? Key outputs would be updating the risk register in the report, so nothing new here. We may update the issue log, right? Any issues experiencing implementing risk responses? Like this person didn't like the fact that they had to go out and set sandbags and they were upset about it. Or this other person was pretty mad at being assigned to updating, the first aid kits. So maybe we should assign somebody else and make sure there's always going to be enough stuff in there, right? So that's what we get, the issue log, lessons learned, team assignments. Those are all outputs to implementing risk responses, because we may need to, introduce a new team member to do that, or change who the risk owner is. So those are documents that would get updated. Now, the register and the project plans also give us a specific detail of what we need to do, right? So the risk register is going to say, here's what the risk response is. The risk report is going to give us information on, how much money we might need to do it. So we'll use both of those documents in order to help us out. And then project plans will tell us the how. We use expert judgment in influencing people, right? Oh, why don't you want to go put the sandbags out? If you don't, then we're going to lose our investment. And if we lose the investment, we're all going to lose our jobs and there's no bonus. All right. But sometimes we just got to influence people. Like, sometimes we shouldn't have to, but we must convince people to do something that our company is paying them to do. So therefore, that's just part of the job, right? It's part of the job that we got to do. So we use our influencing skills. We use software maybe to show it. Maybe this is something where not only is it show up as a bug or maybe as just another story in Jira, but it's also, sort of one of the first things that pops up on Confluence. And then maybe we have a dedicated Slack channel to it as well. All right. So we can use our PMIS to implement risk responses. And does that make sense, by the way? Like sort of using your stack, you can use that as well, using software to implement those responses?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, now we're going to see the third time that the PM is not responsible. And that's here in conduct procurement. So we had the first time with our risk owners. We had the second time with conflict disputes in the first instance. And now the third time that we'll see is going to be now here in procurement negotiations. All right, PMI says that we are not responsible for procurement negotiations, but we should be there to assist and help and make sure that, those folks have what they need to make purchases for us. So here we go. Let's conduct procurements. So this uses the documents that we created in planned procurements, like the RFPs, the RFQs, the RFIs. This is what we would be using here. Any source selection criteria that we developed, any make or buy decisions that we had. Now we're going to be using all of these. So by the way, we've sent out the RFPs. Now what we want to do is we want to receive the responses. We want to select the seller and award a contract. Those are the three things we want to do. Receive responses, all right? And then select the seller, sign a contract. So, look, did I go too far? So the plan, right? The plan procurements focused on determining which seller best fit and then obtaining a, 533, another one. It is not plan, it is conduct. Okay, so conduct procurements. This makes my neck itch every time there's something wrong on these things. Conduct procurements focuses on determining the sellers and obtaining a signed agreement. And then that lets us, work to start and there's things like that. So as we jump in, we'll see that here's the three things that we get. We want to receive responses. That's here on the inputs in the project documents, the seller proposals. We want to receive responses. We want to then select a seller. And then we want to then award a contract. And there are three separate things because, as you can imagine, you may select a seller, but you guys may not come to terms in your negotiations. So then you got to go and you got to pick the next one. So we want to receive responses, select the seller, award a contract. Those are the three things that we're trying to achieve when we conduct procurements. And yeah, we will get agreements, right? Contracts. Those are the top two I have there, number 2 and number 3. Those are the specific outputs here. And then everything else, again, we may get requests for change. We may get updates to our approach. We may get updates to our documents. We may get updates to our OPAs. So let's look at it. So we need the contract. So we got to select someone. All right. We'll start with the initial short list, right? Maybe, look at the proposal evaluation technique. And, a lot of companies will do something like this. On your proposal, I want you to have 8-point font and 1.5-inch margins on page 1. And then I want 9-point font and 1-inch margins on the rest of your document. You ever heard something like that?
Yeah.
So that's an easy way for us to see, if you can't follow these instructions, who knows what else you're going to miss on our project. So we usually do that to whittle it down, Doesn't always mean that we, because sometimes it just could have been someone in the office who made a mistake and we missed out on a really good company. But such is life. That's how we usually do it. And then we'll get some sort of mutually binding contract. Usually has to be written, even though, verbal contracts, they say are legal in California. They've never hold up in court. So mutually binding contracts, right? It's what we need. Statement of work, an LOA, an MOU, any of those things would be acceptable as an agreement. Now, the person authorized to sign legal agreements is often in purchasing or in legal, not the PM. So here we see the third time that the PM is not responsible, and it's here and conduct procurements, specifically in the procurement negotiation or the purchasing of that procurement. All right, so that's the third and final time. Remember that. Risk owners, conflict resolution, procurement negotiations. Every other time you see who is responsible on the exam, it's going to be the PM.
Got it.
Okay, key outputs. Traceability matrix. No, I think they mean, oh, we have a lot of errors on my slides today. Outputs, we get that. This is an input. Excuse me, I used the new service to build these and I'm not very happy with this. This is slide 536. All right, so project documents must be updated to reflect the, maybe I'm wrong. Let me see something. Let me see something here. Where is our... Where's the ITTO for this? Oh, here we go. So it's interesting. I may have been confusing myself, because you see there where on the outputs, we have project documents through traceability matrix and the risk register, but then you see on the inputs, we also have a risk register, and the traceability matrix is something that you would take into account. So when we buy stuff, we definitely would take the same documents into account and then potentially update them. So
okay, so they're just not all listed there, just the key
yeah,
ones.
they're just not all listed on the next slide. So I stand corrected here. Here I am dogging out people that did this and they didn't do anything wrong. These are key outputs. Okay. And then the inputs, we need the procurement documentation. So when PMI says procurement documentation, what are they saying? What terms? What are procurement documents, if you remember?
Agreements, contracts, SOW.
Those are agreements and contracts. Procurement documentation is usually described in letters. To give you a hint.
I don't know. Oh, RFI,
What do each of these mean?
Request for something.
Proposal. Was an ugly P. Request for proposal.
And I don't know the other ones.
Request for quote. Request for information. That's okay. I don't expect you to memorize all this stuff. It's just, there's certain things I know will be good, and I keep asking you that way. That way you're memorizing, you don't even know, because I just keep asking you certain things. So don't worry.
Okay. So are these procurement documentation types, are they in the PMBOK? Or are these just like practical examples?
So both. The PMBOK may not have all these, right? They may not have the PMBOK will have RFP, RFQ, RFI. It may not have the invitation for bid, IFB, but you'll see that because remember, PMI reserves the right to test your material not in the PMBOK. So you may not have that. You may not see, those are all procurement documents. Now, earlier you mentioned agreements and contracts. Those would be something different. those would be, that would be the LOA, the MOU, the SOW. What's another one? So letter of agreement, memorandum of understanding, statement of work, or anything that, you know, would be attached to documents, like exhibits. If you had any exhibits that would be in there, any addendums, you're right, that those would all be considered agreements, aka contracts. Okay. LOA, MOU, statement of work, exhibits, addendums, the word contract, right? Or the word agreement. PMI will use all of those terms to mean an agreement, because that's the actual name of the tool and technique. Then for the procurement documents, it's specifically, I want to buy something. I'm going to send out a request so that people can give me back proposals. And if I go back, one more, whoops, here, that proposal is what we get back, right? I send out an RFP and then I get a response to my RFP. Or I send out an RFQ, request for quote, and I get a quote as an input. And then I can take that as an input. I can use my expert judgment as like, yep, this is a good price. And in the output, we made a purchase, some agreement, right? So that's what the procurement documents are. They're going to be the RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, and then we'll evaluate those, and then we'll make a purchase.
Got it.
Oh, what's happening? Okay, so communication and procurement plans tell, first of all, it's like when it says how to engage sellers, it's like, all right, if we're going to sign a contract with them and we're the customer, then more than likely we're going to use our communication management plan to say, this is how we intend to communicate with you, and this is our expectations. We want, you know, status reports in this time, this date, at this, you know, sort of cadence. So that's the one things that we do. And the other part is to manage the bidding and selection process in a fair and legal manner. So this is where we will get to a bidder conference. Let me just jump down to it. For some reason, I need to exit and restart. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the bidders conference. You ever hear one of these?
No.
This is where, okay, so let me tell you why PMI wants it. In federal procurements or in any government, you know, even state, county, local, city, usually they have to be able to say that they were not showing favoritism to anybody because we're using public funds. So everything has to be transparent. So at a bidders conference, if I put out an RFP that's due, for instance, I'm going to respond to an RFP that's due on the 30th in a couple of days. And on the 14th, there wasn't a bidders conference, but that's when all the questions were due from prospective sellers. So we would all send our questions in. And then regardless of who sent the question, then they would then put the answers out, the responses to everyone. So now, if I had questions about your RFP, so that way I could respond better, you didn't just answer my questions in a vacuum. You answered my question, you put it in a document along with the other 50 questions you got. And now I can see all of those too. And now it's not that, oh, you only told Johnny about this because you wanted to make sure that he won the contract. So that's the idea about the bidders conference. It reduces your liability of litigation, right? So that's the point of it. And then the idea is also it saves you time. You know, you're there and you don't have to answer the same question 50 times. Somebody asks you a question that the other 49 people wanted. You answer once and they all hear it. So that's the purpose of the bidders conference. We talked about the proposal evaluation techniques. So that would be something like 8-point font, 1-inch margin, 9-point font, 1.5. And then, you know, how we approve the contracts. Are they part of the approved sellers? If not, and we want to approve their contract, how do we onboard them as an approved seller? Okay, so that's what we'll take those as inputs. Here's the bidder conference, right? So you can advertise, you have common forums, company website, government contracts that require public disclosures. Usually those are the reasons why you would have a bidders conference. Okay. And then in that bidders conference, again, it allows everyone to ask questions. Sometimes an NDA may be required if you're, you know, producing some super duper weapon for the government or something like that. They don't want you getting that information out if you happen to lose the bid and now you know about it. So they'll sign NDAs up front. And you use your expert judgment to figure out who's going to be the best person to buy from, or the best company, or the best product. And then we'll analyze the data. We'll use source selection criteria to evaluate proposals. And then we'll finally negotiate and get something signed. All right. So again, procurement handles negotiations. The PM is not responsible, but the PM is responsible to ensure that the contract being signed meets the project's needs, right? It's our job to tell them what we need, and then it's their job to then go and execute, negotiate, and bring it back to us. All right. So we are over on 5 minutes. I'm okay with that. If you don't mind, and you don't mind another 5 minutes, I would like for you to read this case study, answer the questions, and then we can start tomorrow with planned stakeholder engagement.
Okay. Okay, I'm done.
All right.
Is the procurement team usually a team within the same organization as the PM, or could it be an outside team? Okay.
Okay. Can it be? Yes. I personally haven't seen that, but I could see where a company could hire a consulting agency like PricewaterhouseCoopers or something like that to go and make a purchase on their behalf to do like the analysis and, but even then still the company would have to be the one to sign, unless they're giving signatory powers. That's like power of attorney. So usually that's not the case. If you think about it in your company now, the purchases, if you're working at a startup, then it's probably like, the founder and maybe just the management team. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. Do you have a company credit card or anything like that?
I don't know, probably.
Yeah. See,
I
so
have
it's
no
like,
idea,
it's one of those things where like we just as PMs, we just usually don't, first of all, we don't have time. You know how long that would take if we also had to do the purchasing? Like, heck no. Like, yeah, we don't do it, but don't look at that as a negative, right? That's not a fun thing to do. I don't want to just sit there all day evaluate different vendors and like, that's not our job as PMs. Like that's another resource for us and we should utilize those resources. But that is, I would say 80% of project managers, even at higher levels, don't actually make the purchases. Someone within legal or someone with like, who can actually sign for something that's usually like 5,000 or less. You can get a PM to do that. Larger corporations, right? You may have a company credit card or something, and then anything over 5,000 needs like director approval. And then anything over 20,000 is usually like needs VP, right? And then anything larger than that usually needs like board approval. So now it's not just the CEO, but they've got to go during one of the board meetings. And then, the other people who sit on the board of directors can determine, yes, this is something we ought to do and, sort of move forward. So that's how that's like the procurement teams, if you will, like how it happens.
Mm-hmm. There's not like a formal team. It could be anyone depending on what's being looked at for purchase.
Right. Now I will tell you like, okay, so I'm working with the hospital right now. At least their IT department has a whole purchasing team, and that makes sense, right? They have 50,000 employees. So they, they have a whole team of people that actually, as a project manager, if I was, one of the projects I did with them was to help them renovate the South Wing. So they built a new MRI department, a doctor's lounge, and a whole cafeteria, the cafe, and they're in downtown Oakland. And so, I had to go to purchasing for them to like, to buy the iPads in the kitchen when they're using that for the orders. Right? We have big iPads on the wall, or in the doctor's lounge, we had a huge 80-inch TV with a big projector screen and Crestron, devices. It's sort of like I would go through and I pick the vendor and I would look at the products and everything. But then when it came down to actually making making the purchase and executing it, the whole procurement team would get in and they would say, oh, this is what you want. No, we have another vendor and that I wouldn't even know about, and we can get a better price from them. So those people, they have the relationships, they do that. So there are times, just depends on the size of the organization. When I worked with Polycom, they also had a procurement department for the entire agency, not just for IT though, right? But they only had 6,000 employees where Sutter has 50. So it just depends on like the size of the org.
I see. Thank you.
All right. So what kind of meeting was used to provide prospective contractors opportunity to gain a deeper understanding of the procurement statement of work?
C.
In which process and process groups or source selection criteria developed as an output?
B.
And which document was not provided to the potential contractors?
A. A. Yeah.
That was pretty straightforward on that one, right? So I think you've got them all right. Yep. Bidder conference, plan procurement management, and source selection criteria. Yeah, we don't want the contractors to know like how we're going to be choosing them because it can stack the deck in their favor. So. Okay, we will get to stakeholder management group. We're okay, right? Again, we would be done with this at the first half of the day, and it's 4 hours. We did 3.5, like 3:45, and this is like a 5-minute process. So, I think we're okay. So, Any questions or any last thoughts?
Not yet. Everything was very straightforward today, I feel.
Yeah, we're just following the plan.
Yeah.
We're just following the plan. There's this part of me I desire. Do you want to just finish this and do stakeholder management?
5 minutes, you said? 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's really quick.
Okay.
But it's 9:43, so totally.
I think it's done at 9:45 anyway, right?
What?
The session.
Oh, that's true. It might cut off on us. That's true, depending on how I said it. If that's the case, we have 50 seconds. So let's say good night, and we'll see each other tomorrow.
Okay, on Thursday.
On Thursday, yes.
Yeah.
On Thursday. 6:30.
Okay, CJ. Sounds
All right,
good.
Karen, take care.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
You too. Bye. Oh, no. There's a chat. She gave me a name. Oh, okay.